can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a £5 in a pot and you can go in and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Where everywhere is pitch dark.
Yes.
And as you go through, these day-glow coloured pictures of the Labour cabinet fall down in front of you. You'd hear the screams for miles.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built, the Universal Studios.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Time to get the kettle on. Wakey, wakey, rise and shine. It is 3 minutes past 6 in the morning. Your weekend starts here. This is Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A big 4 hours coming up. Welcome to the madhouse. The Reform UK councillor who said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland, is now to face, wait for it, a police investigation. Stop the world, I want to get off. Well, a top free speech advisor has been giving her thoughts on how she can actually protect herself against going to jail for saying that she's born and bred in Scotland, and he joins us on the show later this morning. Now, folks, how about this one? As woke clerics scrawl ugly graffiti on one of England's finest cathedrals, what has happened to the modern Church of England? Of course, it's gone woke, and it means that belief in God is going to go up in smoke. We'll get reaction from a leading man of the cloth who's not happy and tells me that the man above is not happy either on the Lord's Day of all days. Margaret Thatcher would be 100 today. And so if she stood around in this current climate, what would she make of the world? What would she have to say about Sir Keir Starmer? Would she now be a Reform UK supporter? And would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? This lady's not for turning, but would she have turned the boats? Not bad for 6:05 in the morning. Come on, folks. This is not a drill. We'll be joined by Fleet Street legend Trevor Kavanagh, who, of course, interviewed Margaret Thatcher on many occasions whilst she was Prime Minister. Meanwhile, in a Talk exclusive, the full devastating effect of illegal immigration, we'll be having a look at what's happened to the much-loved seaside town of Bournemouth. That is a Talk Breakfast exclusive. Plus, more bad headlines for Prince Andrew. We'll get reaction from the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday. And, folks, the monologue is back at 8 a.m. The ex-BBC Blue Peter presenter Richard Bacon, such a fan of the Colombian marching powder that he is, has caused uproar by claiming that people proudly waving the flag of this country just want Britain to be white. I'll be dealing with this absolute fool of a man in no uncertain terms at 8 a.m. And after Gary Neville's comments about middle-aged white men and Sir Lenny Henry's demands that Britain pays 18 trillion pounds in slavery reparations, I'll be asking, why do the multi-millionaire elite hate Britain so much? That's a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. You don't want to miss it. What an absolute unalloyed joy to have your company this morning. I've got to say, I've dispatched the dream team to put the show out today. We've got the executive producer, Dean Spencer, on cameras today, because, of course, this is not just radio, it's TV. Just go to YouTube and search Talk. We have Titus taking your calls all morning. The very vibrant Tommy, 03444991000. And text the word Talk and your message to 87222. Pressing the buttons and keeping the show on the road is the hardest working man in show business. It is Tech Op Dave. With a team like that, we can't fail. Yes, we are on the radio via DAB+. We're online. We're in-app. You can watch the show. Just search Talk on YouTube. So much to get through. Your weekend starts here on Talk Breakfast. So as they say, let's talk. Don't forget that Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. in 2 hours' time. You don't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. I may well get cancelled. I think it's one of those cancelled ones. So you might not want to miss it. Folks, a delight to have you with me this morning. And can I just say that if you're waking up, I'll speak very gently and I'll let you get your first cup of tea. Do you have that? I have that with Mrs. Dolan, where I'm not allowed to speak to her until she's had her first cup of tea. And she's not human until she's had her tea. You may be the same. So get the kettle on. Let's do the next 4 hours together. I want your calls. I want your interaction throughout the show. It may also be that you're currently working. You might be on a night shift. You may be driving a heavy goods vehicle, as one of my excellent callers was yesterday. You may be contributing, as we speak, to the unstoppable powerhouse that is the great British economy. Whatever you're up to today, slumbering in bed, hard at work, we salute you. Let's get this country back on track, shall we? Now, look, let's have a look at the front pages. The Sunday Times. White House anger over UK spy case fiasco. This is a story that's not going to go away. We can build on promise of shared hope. Witkoff. United in their mixture of relief and disbelief, Israelis and Gazans poured onto the streets yesterday for what they hoped would be the last weekend of war. For the first time in 2 long years, the night air in Tel Aviv carried not the sounds of sirens, but the pulse of anticipation ahead of a momentous homecoming. And it's interesting, isn't it? Steve Witkoff, right? This is not an experienced diplomat. He's not a politician. He's a real estate mogul. But do you know what he's done? Alongside Donald Trump, he just brokered peace in the Middle East. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. King tells Harry end security row. The Duchess of Sussex's renewal of his battle with the government over personal security risks derailing his reconciliation with the king. Let me know what you think about that. You're welcome to give me an early call. Do you think that the British taxpayer should cough up for the security of Prince Harry? 03444991000. A great exclusive in The Sun on Sunday. Exclusive, Andrew Bombshell emailed Epstein when he said he'd cut ties. Day after Virginia pic emerged, Duke told him, "We're in this together." Prince Andrew told pedo pal Jeffrey Epstein, "We are in this together," in an email 3 months after the date he said he'd severed contact with the disgraced financier. The Duke messaged on February the 28th, 2011, the day after that infamous photo emerged of him with accuser Virginia Giuffre. And yet he told BBC Newsnight that he'd cut ties with Epstein in December 2010. Sunday Telegraph, Reeves will tax the rich to fill black hole, and intelligence on China embassy threat left out of official review, and minister orders crackdown on hate preachers. The Observer, the burden of hope. There you go, an image of people returning to Gaza following the ceasefire. Delightful that this left-wing newspaper has managed to put a slightly negative spin on what is an extraordinary diplomatic breakthrough. Doom and gloom, hey? A bit like the hate marches yesterday. They're still going on. Did they not get the memo? Do the people on the hate marches, do they not have the internet? Executive producer Dean Spencer. Did no one text them to say we've got a peace deal? Why weren't they celebrating? Those good people, do they want the war? Sunday Mirror, paedophile killed, rocker fiend stabbed to death in prison, ex-Lost Prophets frontman Watkins ambushed by an inmate. Mail on Sunday. Even at the altar, I knew that marrying Cheryl was a huge mistake. Paul Gascoigne there with his latest memoir. And world exclusive, Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. Daily Star Sunday, monster murdered. That's Ian Watkins. And Sunday Express, Reeves eyes £7 billion pensions tax raid. Massive stories to get through. Let's do it in the company of one of my favourite broadcasters, radio legend, the one and only Duncan Barks. Top of the morning, Duncan.
Morning.
So, first of all, we must reflect on the fact that the narrative around the war in Gaza hasn't changed since the announcement of a ceasefire. Why?
Because I think there are certain individuals and certain parties who can't actually bear the fact that Donald Trump, who they actually despise, has managed to pull something off that Biden and Obama could not achieve. I think that's what some of this is about. I also think there's a big chunk of people who were marching, not only in London yesterday, but there were protests in Aberdeen and also in Brighton. For them, it's not about peace. They will not be happy until Israel disappears. It's a hate march.
Are they not trying to finish the job? In their defence, would they say, no, we're on this march because we want to make sure that actually the resolution of this conflict is a positive one for the people of Gaza? Is that what they were doing?
Well, if you're going to be generous, then you might take that view, but I'm not generous. You know,
and they weren't chanting that, were they? And the placards didn't say that.
No, they don't. Nothing has changed. And I think for some people it is literally in their DNA that they now feel they have a green light in this country to march on the streets at a massive cost to the UK taxpayer. I'm all for the right to protest, right? But we've had these marches pretty much every weekend since the 7th of October,
glad you said
2023. That. What?
But I'm really glad you pointed out the cost of the economy. Yeah. Because, first of all, it's the policing, which runs into the hundreds of thousands.
Absolutely.
And therefore by now millions.
Yep.
But it's also the impact on the businesses.
Exactly.
Forget it. Because I was passing through, when I'm on the radio, I hate talking about where I am because we are not just national, we're global. So who cares if I'm stuck in Soho? Yeah. But I will just say that the entire centre of London you can't get into in a vehicle. No. And therefore you're not spending your money there.
No, it's a nightmare. And that's before you get into, for me, the very real topic that you have people of Jewish heritage who feel that when these marches are taking place in London, they cannot go out. They can't go into the West End. They can't walk down Whitehall. That's not right, is it?
You didn't happen to catch Matthew Said's piece in The Times on this last weekend?
No.
He did a really good thing that more journalists should do, which is he simply went down to the march to talk to people.
Yeah.
And Matthew does not have skin in the game. No. He's bang in the middle when it comes to the Gaza conflict. He's written pieces where he said Israel have gone too far. Yeah. And he's written pieces where he said Hamas are bad.
He's a great journalist.
Isn't he? And he's very balanced. He's not tribal, although he has just joined the Tories, but that's another story. But overall, his journalism is balanced, and I think he's, a very smart guy. And he went down and he had a simple question to ask those down there. And he said, I understand why you're marching today. No problem. You know, what motivates you, whatever. So an open question where they will tell him what they think, which is end the genocide, all their other stuff. And then he said, I've got a question for you. Are Hamas partly culpable? Right, that was the expression, partly culpable. Which, given that it's a war, both sides are always
exactly.
You know, QED. At which point they turned on him. One person began running after him.
Really?
He was shouted at. He was intimidated, and it was expletives, and it was
because
carnage.
he dared to ask a question that somehow puts the onus, as you rightly say, on the other side of the argument, which is, well, Hamas surely have a case to answer, and the people who are protesting can't bear what they perceive to be any form of criticism of Hamas. And it's, I mean, I go so far as to say some of these people are well and truly brainwashed. That's what it appears to be.
Well, they appear to be. And what's funny, Duncan, is that they characterise themselves as the good people. Now, look, you and I know, I mean, some of my best friends are lefties, okay? I've always...
Well, what's that like?
Well, it's uncomfortable. They're wrong about everything. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, we've all got an inner lefty. I'm like so many millions of people, I voted for Tony Blair 3 times for my sins.
Wow.
I admired Barack Obama.
I did it in 97.
And then
I'm happy to admit that, and then I kind of rode back a little bit.
You wised up a little bit, unlike me. Look, in those days, I was a brainwashed sheep. Right? Ever since I came to talk, I've woken up, baby. But no, the bottom line is that, you know, most people are on a spectrum and you move around. And by the way, I want to go back to the old days, Duncan, where on election day, you'd be thinking, right, who am I going to vote for? And you'd have a big think about all of the different options. Well, of course, that's all gone. It's all tribal. But the issue is that the irony of how the radical left have appropriated the idea that they're the good people and that they are the anti-racists. And if you look at the abuse, the death threats, the rape threats, the cancellation, the intimidation, they're provably not the good people.
No, and I think there's a case to answer both with the last Conservative government and the current Labour government with the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood. She could do a lot more to control these marches, and she has done zilch. Absolutely nothing. If you want to explore the politics of it, and let's explore the politics of it this morning, and I don't think it's a conspiracy theory, she knows that there is a big chunk of the Muslim vote in various constituencies where there are sitting Labour MPs who are vulnerable at the moment, right, ahead of the next election. People like Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary in Ilford, okay, wafer thin majority, a couple of hundred or whatever. She, I believe, is taking that into consideration and won't come down hard and just say, do you know what, enough with these marches. 2 years worth of marches. And at what point can you argue the issue, which is, oh, well, we should carry on allowing the Met Police to keep an eye on these marches and police them. We should tolerate it, because at some point there will be a tipping point. And I think normal people, not those who maybe get their worldview from social media, but normal people who believe in the right to protest will just go, do you know what? I think you probably had your right to protest now. There's a peace deal here. Admittedly, it's remarkably fragile, and I think the next couple of days we're going to see some horrific images coming out. We're going to see body bags arriving in Israel, which I'm sorry to be so crass about it, but there are hostages who died in captivity who are held by Hamas. We're going to see those body bags. It's going to be remarkably emotional. It's going to make people even more angry in Israel. We know that there are some of Netanyahu's fellow cabinet members who want actually, I believe, don't want this peace deal to work for all kinds of political reasons. It is remarkably fragile, but whilst it appears to be happening, and whilst it appears that we have Israeli forces coming out of Gaza, we have Gazans going back into the territory, I think these marches are vastly inappropriate. And I just wish we had a politician who had the backbone to go, enough is enough.
Well, this will shock you, right? I have just done a little research into the potential cost to you, myself and Duncan of policing these so-called peace marches, and I've got that shocking figure, which I shall reveal next.
I think Robert Jenrick's comments were more than just unfortunate. I think they were
racist.
I think they were disgraceful, and I've choose my own words. I think they were appalling and disgraceful. And as Andy Street, former mayor of the West Midlands, said on TV this week, were factually wrong. And I trust the.
Well, they're not factually wrong.
I trust the former mayor of the West Midlands more than I do Robert Jenrick.
If Robert Jenrick factually did not see another white face for 90 minutes and he says, I didn't see another white face, that is a fact.
Well, he says that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Folks, what a busy show we've got for you at 8 a.m. This is not a drill. The Dolan's Dispatch is a very special one today. Ex-BBC Blue Peter star Richard Bacon has said anyone flying the flag simply wants Britain to be white. That's a lie. That's a lie. So I'll be dealing with that in no uncertain terms, plus Sir Lenny Henry and his reparations and Gary Neville at 8 a.m. Why do the celebrity elite hate this country so much? Don't miss it. But with me in the studio reacting to the big stories of the day for the next hour is the brilliant broadcaster Duncan Barks. And Duncan, The Sun on Sunday and the Mail on Sunday are running a massive exclusive on Prince Andrew. Sun on Sunday, Andrew Bombshell, we're in this together.
Yeah, front page of the Sun on Sunday. It's an exclusive.
Yeah.
Do you know, the language is actually quite, how do I put it gently, vomit-inducing. There you are, not so gentle. So the background to this story is we know Prince Andrew gave this interview to BBC Newsnight back in November 2019. It's been well documented. They made films off the back of it as well. I think it kind of has kept Emily Maitlis sadly in the spotlight. And he told BBC Newsnight that he had had no contact with Epstein since December 2010. That's what he said. And viewers and listeners to Talk will remember it was that famous interview where he talked about never sweating. Do you remember that?
I did indeed.
I don't
It's a
sweat.
special condition.
Yeah, special condition. You have to
He's
fly
sweating now, isn't he?
choppers over the Falklands. I think he'll be having additional sweat this morning because it appears there's an email. So let's just recap the timeline to this. So November 2019, big interview. He thought it was a good idea to do this interview on BBC's Newsnight. He said he was on record as saying he had no contact with Epstein since December 2010. We have in the Sun today and also in the Mail what appears to be an email that was sent in February 2011, all right? So a couple of years later, that's the timeline for people listening and watching this morning, and this went to Epstein, and it says the following: "I'm just as concerned for you, exclamation mark. Don't worry about me, exclamation mark." And this is the bit that I just think is really, really creepy. "It would seem we are in this together and we have to rise above it. Otherwise, keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon." Followed by 4 exclamation marks. So, front page of the Sun on Sunday, "We are in this together." That's the headline. You look at the actual rest of the text of this email that was sent to Epstein almost a couple of years after Andrew said he had ceased contact with him, saying, "We're in this together, keep in close touch, and we'll play some more soon." Do you know, for me, the word in that I find actually quite disturbing is play.
Well, isn't it? Jesus, that's a very chilling word.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And there's a brilliant piece here by Matt Wilkinson. He's the royal editor of The Sun on Sunday, and his opening paragraph, just giving some analysis to this, or rather comments. "Andrew's Jeffrey Epstein scandal will not go away, so maybe it's finally time the arrogant Duke did." And I find myself leaning towards this now. This man, Prince Andrew, is an embarrassment to the royal family. All right, the royal family's having a little bit of a reinvention. You've got King Charles now. You've got William, who is doing some great stuff. I think the new face of the royals, talking about mental health. People might have seen the interview a couple of days ago. He almost broke down talking to someone whose partner was affected, well, who died as a result of ending their life. Okay, so you've got this image change that's going on. You've also got Prince Harry making life a little bit difficult for his dad still. There's some stories knocking around in the papers regarding that. Prince Andrew is just an embarrassment you don't need. And I think the time has come for him to do the decent thing. goes somewhere else. Where he goes, I don't know. I mean, he might still have some value or some kudos in the Middle East somewhere. I don't know. I don't know what you do with him. I don't know if he should set up his own brand of gin, because that's what a lot of people seem to do. But it's just like, just stop. But not even a case of stop digging. It's like, put away the JCB, all right? Clearly, what you said in this Newsnight interview is not standing up to scrutiny. The Sun has got a copy of this email that you sent to someone a couple of years after you said you ceased contact. Probably it's time for you to disappear.
Most definitely, and unfortunately, he's got this toxic partnership with Sarah Ferguson. Because the issue is that she wrote a sort of grovelling email to, or was it a text message to Jeffrey Epstein as well. And again, after she'd said she'd cut off contact with the convicted paedophile. So the two of them are damaged goods. Charles can't do too much more, so they've lost HRH, and he's no longer a frontline serving royal. Do you think he should be banished from family occasions like funerals and weddings,
I think
church
that would,
services?
Yeah, I do. I think that would speak volumes. So, I mean, this is a fascinating story. And just so we're clear on the timeline, you know, he said that he'd had no contact with Epstein since December 2010, then this email was Feb 2011. So I said earlier, a couple of years later, it was a few months, that he was still in contact. But the point still remains, it appears that he wasn't telling the truth on camera, and it appears in the Sun on Sunday today that there is proof that he was still emailing this bloke he said he wasn't in contact with.
Is it a dilemma for Charles, though? Because if Charles pushes Andrew too far, he could do a Prince Harry. He could run off to America, he could write a book, he could do a documentary about the royal family on Netflix. He would make millions.
That's an interesting thought, isn't it? Do you not think that space has been taken by Huzzah?
Well, I mean, if you're the commissioning editor at HarperCollins, are you going to have that conversation? You know, if his people reached out, do you take that call?
It would be dynamite, wouldn't it?
Wouldn't it?
It would be dynamite.
You know, Andrew, my story. I mean, it would be the most risible tome ever written, immediately worthy of pulping and the bargain basement.
But what would his story be?
Well, this is the issue, which is he knows, and I certainly don't seek to defend him, but he's a member of the royal family, he's the king's brother, he knows where the bodies are buried.
That's very true, and he could probably give an inside track on royal life and
the
stuff
my goodness.
that we don't know
Andrew
about.
on Diana, Andrew on his brother the king, Andrew on Anne, Andrew on Harry. I mean, seriously, I'm actually salivating, and I've got dollar signs ringing in my eyes. Now, I hope he's not listening to Talk Breakfast, because I don't want to give him ideas. But would that not be in the back of the mind of King Charles? Because if he's completely banished and excommunicated, at that point he's got no skin in the game.
I think you're right. I mean, it would be. I find myself in a difficult position because I think that would be the worst thing that he could possibly do. Yeah, I would buy the book, right? Who wouldn't buy the book?
And we talk about it on the show.
And we talk about it at length. So I think it's interesting. If we were dealing with another kind of personality, and I know some people who worked in the RAF who on the planes that he used to kind of like be ferried around in, and you know, so if you're in a property or indeed in a vehicle and there's a member of the royal family, you have the royal standard flying, right? That's what you need to do. And I've got to choose my words a little bit carefully. A plane would be landing somewhere in West London at 3:30 in the morning, right? Everyone being absolutely knackered and thinking we just need to go home. And he would be on board, and he would still expect people to put up the royal standard. That's the little the flag that would come out not come out the top, but you put the royal standard up just above the cockpit, and expect everyone to be down on the tarmac saluting him at 3:30 in the morning, right, and bowing to him. And there was a kind of view that he just, like most normal people would go, it's all right lads, we've had a knackering flight, let's just go home. But he still expected that kind of thing to happen. So I've heard stories about him being quite arrogant, quite aloof, and quite rude. And I only make that point not to assassinate his character, because I think he's doing quite a good job of that himself at the moment. But if we were talking about a different kind of personality, you would think that he would just step back from the royal occasions. He'd go, do you know what, for the good of the firm, as they call it, the royal family, I probably won't attend church on Christmas Day morning because it won't do you any favours. But we're not dealing with that kind of personality. And so consequently, it's down to Charles to decide, well, you know, what do I do to limit this damage, this ongoing damage to the royal family?
Disgraced paedophile Ian Watkins murdered in prison. Is it always wrong to celebrate the death of another human being? Do we make an exception for him? We'll discuss that next.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Sunday Mirror, paedophile killed, rocker fiend stabbed to death in prison. Ex-Lost Prophets frontman Ian Watkins ambushed by a fellow inmate. Is it ever wrong? Is it always wrong, Duncan Barks, to celebrate the murder of another human being?
I don't think the word should be celebrate, but I personally am not losing any sleep over what has happened. I mean, I don't want to upset people at this early hour watching or listening, but let's just remind ourselves that he was serving 35 years for child sex offences, including, and this is the bit that I think people need to be aware of, the attempted rape of a baby, described by police as the most, quote, shocking and harrowing ever seen, right? Yeah. That's in the Sunday Mirror today. I personally cannot lose any sleep over this.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's just one of those stories. I mean, I couldn't, you know, people have been online. It was quite different with the Charlie Kirk situation. This is a political activist in the United States who, you know, was killed in his prime for trying to have political conversations with his opponents.
Yeah.
Although that didn't stop plenty of people celebrating on that occasion, but you can't conflate the two, I guess.
I don't think so.
How about the Sunday Express? Reeves eyes £7 billion pensions tax raid. Meanwhile, the Telegraph report, Reeves will tax the rich to fill her black hole. I mean, this is like the sort of Damocles hanging over the Chancellor, isn't it? The next budget at the end of November.
Who would have thought it? Who would have thought it? I mean, there's so much interesting stuff going on here. You will now not find a frontline Labour politician talking about, we won't raise income tax or national insurance, blah, 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 or VAT. Remember, that was the election pledge when they went into July 2024. They still talked about it once they were in government. Then we had Reeves's budget where she made it very clear, we haven't raised income tax and, you know, all VAT. So you've got that narrative that slowly, and that messaging has faded now. And it's very clear that the pitch has been rolled for tax increases on the 26th of November, which is the next budget, because they have, frankly, mismanaged the economy. They can't pin all of this on the Conservatives now, which is what we've seen over the last year and a half, right? It was just like, because look what we inherited, blah, blah, blah. You have had well over a year now, almost a year and a half, your name above the door, Rachel Reeves, Keir Starmer, to manage the economy. You introduced a budget, your first budget, that hammered the private sector and private business. I mean, I bang on about this all of the time because I'm a big fan of the hospitality sector. I like going to the pub, I like eating out, right? And that sector, and it's not only that sector, there's elsewhere, have been absolutely hammered by the increase in the minimum wage, the level of employers' national insurance going up. You have seen businesses doing a number of things, either sacking people to cover the costs, not employing additional people, or passing those cost increases onto the punter, you and I, and people watching and listening talk. It has hammered the hospitality sector. It has also hammered all kinds of other businesses. They have mismanaged the economy. And if you remember, when she did her last budget, it was just like, we've got this multi-billion-pound black hole we have to fill. Well, we have another one now. And estimates are 20 to 30 billion. You can't pin that on the Tories. That is as a result of your mismanagement of the economy. So I think anyone who has got assets, who has got a pension, a private pension, who maybe have scrimped and saved throughout their life, got stocks and shares or whatever, they're coming for you on the 26th of November.
Well, they are. And, you know, you mentioned that there's a legacy of economic failure from the Tories, and I wouldn't dispute that one bit. Partly, in my view, as a result of the COVID
Absolutely,
overreaction.
And people forget that, don't they? You know, many people enjoyed furlough, but they seem to forget that money had to come from somewhere. So whilst I'm always happy to criticise the Conservative government or the previous one where I think criticism is due, I think you're right. There should be some allowance for the fact that a lot of the debt that was run up on the borrowing was to fund this country and keep it ticking over and to make sure businesses didn't go under during the pandemic.
Well, most definitely. And Labour and Sir Keir Starmer, then the leader of the opposition, was the biggest cheerleader for lockdowns. He wanted more. So if Labour had opposed the COVID measures, then they could argue that, yes, it really was a Tory failure. But you can't ask for the economy to be put on hold for 2.5 years and to pay people to stay at home and not take some responsibility, or at least acknowledge, you know, the elephant in the room of COVID. And not just that, but the fact that the government subsidised people's energy bills for a couple of years following Ukraine, which ran to, I think, ballpark figure, around £45 million. No small amount of money.
Massive
amount. So that's the issue that we've got, and it's a political problem. Of course, they brought it on themselves as well by talking the economy down after entering office.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is obviously a political ruse, isn't it? Because it gives you cover. You say, oh, look at the mess. But actually, I think what they should have done, if with the absolute 2020 vision of hindsight, is to come in and go, yes, it's a mess, but I'm super optimistic about the economy.
I have a plan.
And I have a plan. Yeah. And instead, they spent a year continuing. It's like, did you not know that you're the government now?
Exactly.
And that it's in your best interest to talk
hit the nail
things
on the head.
up.
I think they still have this mindset, even now, of behaving like they are in opposition.
Yes.
And it also shows a massive amount of political naivety. If you talk down the economy, what happens? You find that people are going to make it more expensive for you to borrow money. You're also going to find that businesses around the world who might be thinking, I'm going to open a factory or our head office in Britain, all of a sudden go, oh, do you know what? The Chancellor of that country says the economy's trash. Maybe we'll decide to do it somewhere else. It's just, if it's not naivety, it's stupidity, right?
100% took the words out of my mouth. Kemi Badenoch, writing in the Mail on Sunday newspaper, of course, leader of the opposition, if Labour want to steal my plan to axe the hated stamp duty, they're more than welcome. Over to you, Rachel. Now, you were in attendance at Conservative Party conference, hosting some major live events. Yeah. First of all, what was the atmosphere like at conference this year?
Well, let me just make it clear to listeners and viewers this morning. I was there in my capacity as a media man, not a Conservative Party member. Yeah. Not a member of any political party, but that might change.
You're a working broadcaster.
I'm a working broadcaster, so I was hosting some events for the Taxpayers Alliance, which is a think tank. Yeah. Does what it says on the tin. It has concerns about taxpayers.
Non-partisan.
Is not affiliated to any political party, and the mantra is we shouldn't be paying as much tax as we should, and the tax that we are paying should be used wisely and not wastefully. So I'm more than happy to work with the TPA, and we had a number of events in what was called the Think Tent.
Right.
And I was hosting some events there. And they were great. We interviewed the Shadow Chancellor, Mel Stride, on stage, who I think is fair to say is a relatively dry man. That's probably what you need if they're going to attempt to manage the economy and make it better. Someone described him as a delicious grey beard and a first-class bean counter, which I thought was a good description. But anyway, answering your question properly, I got there on the Sunday afternoon, and it was quiet, okay? And already there was a little bit of a narrative developing by certain political journalists going, this is definitely, it's like a wake, they were saying. And it was quiet on the Sunday evening. It started to pick up around Monday lunchtime, and I think my assessment was it was quite simple that people who were going to go along for whatever reason thought, I'll have my weekend and hop on a train to Manchester first thing Monday morning. Started to get busy. It was interesting. I was also at the Reform conference as well, so I can compare and contrast the two. The Reform UK conference, which was in Birmingham a few weeks before, was buzzing. Right, absolutely buzzing. It was like a pub on a Friday night. That's my best way of describing it, where people are just going. I'm not talking about people getting hammered. There were a few pints being sunk, but there was that kind of buzz where you know what it's like in a boozer on a Friday night. 5:30, 6, 7 o'clock, end of the week, people are going, I've got through the working week, I'm going to have a couple of beers, these are my mates, and there's a nice vibe about our place. That is what the Reform UK conference was like. There was something going on. It was buzzy. I didn't see the same kind of buzz at the Conservative Party conference. It did get busier. I have some views. Kemi Badenoch, by my reckoning, didn't do any of the fringe events. So for people listening and watching, fringe events are kind of like not in the main auditorium on the stage. They tend to be in side rooms. You might have people talking about their hobby horses. It might be about taxation. It might be about something else. In my view, she should have attended a lot of those because the people in those rooms were her supporters, right? And I think Kemi needs all the support she can get at the moment. I also didn't see a great many shadow ministers, and this might be unfair if anyone's listening, get in contact, but mixing with what I would call the activists and the supporters who'd forked out several £100, right? They do their bit, and there was like a walkway that meant, you did your bit in the main conference bit and you'd walk back to the Midland Hotel. I mean, it was covered, it was accessible. I could walk down it, other people could walk down it. But I would have liked to have seen, as an ex-political comms guy, you know, some of these shadow ministers just breaking away, spending time with people milling around.
Press the flesh, marshal the troops.
Exactly that, because I think that's what the Conservative Party needs at the moment. I wasn't there for the speech. I went back on Tuesday evening. I drove back from Manchester to Sussex. Love the M6 toll, by the way, one of the world's greatest inventions.
Well done, then.
I love the M6 toll because you can buy time. But I watched Kemi's speech on the Wednesday morning, and you know, she's been lauded for her speech, and it was a good speech. But I do find myself thinking people needed to hear or see that probably 6 months before they did. And there's a little uptick in some of the polls so far that we've seen in the last couple of days off the back of the Tory party conference. But where do you go from here? You know, and well documented here on Talk, it's the May elections everyone's looking at now, and what will happen there.
Yeah, I mean, do you think that offering change is the key currency of any election campaign? And if so, surely it's reforms to lose, because you won't be looking in 3.5 years' time to Labour for change, because they're the incumbent. Yeah. And not much has changed, really, apart from increasing taxes since the Tories. And then you look at the Tories, well, they had a decade and a half in power. Yeah. So have reform sort of appropriated the change ticket, and could that be decisive?
I think so. I mean, I think it's reforms to lose currently, looking at all of the polling. I think they need to, I think there's a couple of challenges. One of which is, at the moment, they kind of like, and we've seen the Tory attack lines developing here going, Reform UK is a socialist party. They want to renationalise some of the public services like steel. That's socialism. They want to scrap the 2-child benefit cap. You know, they're going to pay more in welfare and that kind of stuff. Reform at some point need to decide what they are. Are they kind of like, are they going to go for the red wall, so you have some Labour-like policies, or are you going to try and hold on to that kind of Thatcherite policy of the South East, you know? And the other thing is they need to show their workings out in more detail. I interviewed Richard Tice at the Reform Conference and on stage, and he said to me, you're always writing and saying things about me not showing my figures. And I was like, well, Tice, you need to show your figures, because that just builds the gravitas of you as a human being, if you want to be the next Chancellor, and also your party. It's all well and good saying we're going to do this, but to get that, maybe that vote that floats, people need to feel confident that you've thought about it and you've worked out your figures in fine detail. And at the moment, I think that's Reform's Achilles heel. When it comes to the economy, I think people are going, oh, I don't know. It's all a bit of a, you know, on the back of a fag packet.
Well, the former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. More on that next.
I think Robert Jenrick's comments were more than just unfortunate. I think they were
racist.
I think they were disgraceful, and I'll choose my own words. I think they were appalling and disgraceful. And as Andy Street, former mayor of the West Midlands, said on TV this week, were factually wrong. And I trust the.
Well, they're not factually wrong.
I trust the former mayor of the West Midlands more than I do Robert Jenrick.
If Robert Jenrick factually did not see another white face for 90 minutes and he says, I didn't see another white face, that is a fact.
Well, he says that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Wonderful to have your company this morning. It's Talk Breakfast. I'm Mark Dolan. A very, very busy 3 hours and 10 minutes to go. Sandra, good morning. She's messaged the show. Love your show, Mark. So glad you're back on Talk. Sandra, thank you for that. It is great to be back, and thank you for having me. Peter in Bromley has said, morning, Mark and team. Bill says, good morning, Mark. It's Bill from Thailand. Reference Prince Harry and Andrew. Just take their titles away. No more court cases for Harry, and no more help for Andrew and his ex-wife. Valerie says, hi Mark and Duncan, always enjoy your show. Sadly shocked at how our once great country has become. These hate marches should be stopped. This awful, awful government should be stopped as well. Margaret in Yorkshire, good morning Margaret. Top of the morning to you. She says, good morning Mark. Is it possible to replay the pledges that Labour made before the election? Everything fully costed. How much have they gone back on? And Simon says, ban all protests for 36 months. Save £3 billion on policing marches every weekend in Britain. Well, of course, I meant to tell you the cost of those so-called peace marches, and the policing alone is £150 million. Wider economic impacts could be double or triple that. And you and I will be paying for it, folks. What a delight. Plus, Duncan Barks, the issue is that there's going to be more crime happening elsewhere when the police are busy manning these marches.
Well, we know that it's not just the Met Police who end up policing these marches. They have to bus in coppers from other parts of the United Kingdom. So you don't have to make too much of a leap, do you? If you've got a load of coppers who have been in Warwickshire and now they're in policing these marches one Saturday, what are the criminals doing in Warwickshire? Probably going into shops and nicking stuff, I should imagine.
Most definitely. Now, the former Prime Minister, Gordon Brown, has launched an extraordinary attack on Nigel Farage. Tell me more.
This is interesting. So, but not surprising. So we're starting to see this, the word is narrative, developed by certain Labour politicians regarding Nigel Farage's Reform UK, but they personalised it. They're not just going after the party, they're going after the man. Why are they doing this? Because they are remarkably vulnerable. This is the Labour Party to Reform UK, which, I mean, have been topping opinion polls for months. I mean, Farage is always quite keen to highlight the fact that over 100 opinion polls now have put Reform UK out in front. So we know they're vulnerable. We know that we've got elections coming up in May next year. We've got some English elections, local elections. We've got obviously elections in Scotland and Wales. Labour are feeling vulnerable, and they're going after Farage. There's no two ways about it. You know, we saw David Lammy making allegations that he was somehow bizarrely flirted with the Nazi youth, which is just bizarre because he wasn't even, alive when the Nazi youth was there. We've had Keir Starmer and other Labour politicians use some quite harsh language. The latest Labour politician is Gordon Brown. Now, according to the Mirror newspaper this morning, and they're saying this is one of their exclusives, Brown has warned that Nigel Farage's government would lead to more children in poverty and more pensioners suffering. He's hit out at almost what is being described as the £300 billion worth of cuts pledged by Reform UK. And he goes on to say it would take the equivalent of shutting down the NHS and closing schools to achieve such enormous savings. Richard Tice, who we mentioned earlier, deputy leader, previously said he is plotting to slash public funding to 35% of GDP, which could deprive public services of £275 billion. So Brown is the latest Labour politician to use what I would class as another version of Project Fear here,
yes,
which listeners and viewers to talk may remember around the Brexit debate. And we still all have the scars that, you had George Osborne, who was Chancellor at the time, basically just saying, well, if you vote for Brexit, right, your house price is going to plummet, blah, blah, blah. I'll have to do an emergency budget. And it was all part of this Project Fear to persuade people not to vote Leave. I think we're seeing another version of Project Fear here being run by the Labour government, which is don't vote for reform. If you vote for reform, and as Gordon Brown says here, well, they're going to shut down the NHS. And there's no real basis for this. There is a heck of a lot of waste in the public sector. I've got friends who work in the public sector, who work in the NHS. I've seen it firsthand. I did some public affairs work for the NHS and indeed elsewhere. There is waste that could be cut. And let's go back to the point we made about policing these marches that happen every weekend in London, have done for the last 2 years. It is taxpayers. It's not government money, it's taxpayers' money that fund the NHS and everything else, right? There is stuff that could be cut. The idea that Brown, I think, is so desperate to go, well, vote for reform and effectively the NHS might shut down, is for the birds, right?
Yeah.
Nigel Farage might be some things to some people, but he's not a stupid politician who's going to go, yeah, well, we'll just close down the NHS, because he knows there's no votes in that and it would scare people. But what we're seeing, and we'll see more and more of this, is they will be targeting Farage individually and Reform UK with increasingly large amounts of, some might say, ludicrous claims about what they would do in government because they are scared of them.
Well, it's interesting because some Conservatives and some on the right are characterising Nigel Farage as a neo-socialist.
Yeah.
Because certainly to attract those Northern Red Wall votes, he's talking about, scrapping the two-child benefit cap and nationalising certain industries, therefore sending out a message of big state.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, there are voters in the southeast who would really like to have Thatcherism.
Yeah.
Which is it? What party is Reform UK? Have they even decided?
I don't think they have decided, and I think I made this point earlier when we were chatting about it. At some point, they're going to have to offer a very clear proposition to the UK electorate, because you can't be all things to all people without your political opponents rightly calling you out about it, because that's politics. You can't say to people, in Stafford, well, we'll do this and we'll renationalise this, and you say to people who are in Essex, well, we're going to cut back on waste, blah 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 blah. They're going to have to find a clever way of appealing to both sets of voters, and I don't quite think they're there yet. I mean, the only other thing to comment on regarding this is Farage has said himself that the old political landscape of left or right has changed a little bit. People don't necessarily think that way, and I think there's some mileage behind that view, because I've always bristled a little bit with the idea that you define someone. I mean, you and I talked about lefties earlier, and there's some hardcore lefties out there, but most normal people might have a slightly right-wing view on something, might be law and order, right, but a slightly left-wing view on something else, or they might be socially more liberal. You don't necessarily put people in these boxes. So Farage could be quite clever here and just go, this idea of left and right and, Thatcherism or capitalism versus socialism, those terms, that world doesn't exist anymore. Actually, it's quite feasible to build a plan for the future and have a government that does the right things depending on what they think they are, given the issue. And that maybe gets us beyond the left or right in politics.
As Boris Johnson taught us in 2019, there's more to politics than just winning an election. It's what happens when you're in office, and notwithstanding COVID, which was obviously a huge disturbance to their programme. Ultimately, many see the Boris years as a huge lost opportunity.
Yeah.
A generation of ex-Labour voters lending their vote to the Conservatives for the first time in their lives. There's a risk that Reform could do the same thing, that it could be Boris 2.0. They need to spend the next 3.5 years preparing for government, making sure that their numbers add up, and having a plan.
Most definitely. They need a plan, because that way it can knock their critics into a cocked hat, because they can say, this is what we're going to do. And I mentioned this earlier, Richard Tice's criticism of me, you always say that I haven't shown them my figures. It's just like, show us your workings out. That way people will go, particularly floating voters, they are a serious, credible option for government. That is their biggest plan. And I know they are talking to think tanks and various other organisations across Westminster, trying to get some access into their research to go, Is that how that works? Okay, we want to achieve this. How will we do it? And stuff like that. So they are making some strides in that area, but ultimately they need to be able to say to people, this is our policy on this, and these are our sums to make it work.
How about this in the Mail on Sunday, Duncan? BBC sends 11 staff to live stream the World Conquer finals.
Yeah.
It's lost Test cricket, the Grand National, and now the boat race, because apparently that's elitist. But fear not, because an army of producers will be covering this rather seismic sporting event. What does this tell you about the culture of the BBC? I've got no doubt you've broadcasted for the BBC many times in your career.
I worked at the BBC for 6 years.
There you go.
You and I have worked in the commercial broadcasting sector for a number of years. I think we both know that what we've achieved in the commercial sector can be done with 1.5 people, yet within the BBC it appears to take 10 times that. There is waste within the BBC. Before we got onto the issue of whether or not we should still have a licence fee, there is waste within the BBC. It needs to be cut back. I look at Glastonbury, right? We all know it's no open secret within the BBC. Glastonbury and Eurovision, okay? If your editor wants to reward you, or your manager wants to reward you, or keep you on side, it's like, do you fancy going to Glastonbury, producing some of the output? You don't need the hundreds of people that go, all right? And as I keep saying, you and I have worked in commercial broadcasting, the Conquer Championships. We would turn up there with one other person, right? And we would file all of our reports and do all of the stuff for the social medias and YouTube and stuff like that and make it work. The BBC need to take a leaf out of our book.
Brilliant stuff. More from the excellent Duncan Barks next up, plus front pages and a true scandal about illegal immigration. That's next.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth at this theme park. So what I do, mate, I'll shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed Whack the Rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a House of Mirrors, where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the. Is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
We're
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Top of the morning, folks. I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. A very big 3 hours to come. Let's go. Yes, indeed. Lots to get through. Great to have your company. Your weekend starts here. Welcome to the madhouse. The Reform UK councillor, who said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland, is now to face a police investigation. Well, a legal expert has been advising her, and he joins us on the show this morning. Meanwhile, as woke clerics scrawl ugly graffiti on one of England's finest cathedrals to promote diversity, and as another church has a silent disco, what's going on in the Church of England? We'll get reaction from a leading man of the cloth who is not happy. Meanwhile, Margaret Thatcher would be 100 today. So, if she was here, what would she make of the world? What would she have to say about Sir Keir Starmer? Would she now be a Reform UK supporter? And would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? I'll be asking Fleet Street legend and a man who interviewed Margaret Thatcher when she was Prime Minister on multiple occasions, Trevor Kavanagh. The full devastating impact of illegal immigration in a Talk Breakfast exclusive. We'll be looking at what's happened to the much-loved seaside town of Bournemouth. Meanwhile, more bad headlines for Prince Andrew. Should King Charles act? Should he chuck his brother out of the family and throw him out of the Royal Lodge? We'll get the inside story from the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday. And this is not a drill. The monologue is back in just 1 hour's time. At 8 a.m, the ex-BBC Blue Peter star, Richard Bacon, has caused uproar by claiming that people proudly waving the flag of this country just want Britain to be white. That is a lie. It's a lie. And I'll be dealing with this absolute numpty in no uncertain terms at 8 o'clock. And after Gary Neville's comments about middle-aged white men and Sir Lenny Henry's demand that Britain pays £18 trillion worth of slavery reparations, I'll be asking, why do the millionaire media elite hate Britain so much? That's a special Dolan's Dispatch at 8 a.m. You don't want to miss it. My priority is getting your opinions on the national airwaves. Call me, 0344 499 1000. Tommy is taking your calls today. He's had 3 coffees. He's ready to go. You can text the word TALK and your message to 87222. And we're on the radio via DAB+. We're online, we're in-app, and you can watch the show. Just search TALK on YouTube and up we pop. So, lots to get through. Happy Sunday to one and all. Your weekend starts here on Talk Breakfast. So, as the saying goes, let's talk. And to kick things off, let me bring you up to speed on today's front pages. The Mail on Sunday, world exclusive. Prince Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. The Sunday Telegraph, Rachel Reeves will tax the rich to fill her black hole. Intelligence on China embassy threat left out of official review. And Minister orders crackdown on hate preachers. Sunday Express, Reeves eyes £7 billion pensions tax raid. Sun on Sunday, exclusive, Andrew bombshell, we are in this together. Daily Star Sunday, sicko Watkins throat slashed by lag in jail, monster murdered. The Observer, the burden of hope, a stunning photograph of Gazans returning to their burned out city. And the Sunday Times, White House anger over UK spy case fiasco. And King tells Prince Harry, end security row. To react to the big stories of today, I'm delighted to welcome legendary broadcaster and podcast host Duncan Barks. Good morning, Duncan.
Good morning.
Duncan, we need to get a plug-in for your very popular and successful YouTube show, which is called Prick with a Fork.
Yes.
What's it about?
Sausages.
There you go.
Obviously, it's about the Great British Banger. So thank you for the opportunity to plug it. You can find it on YouTube, Prick with a Fork. It's all about my love of sausages, making sausages, eating sausages, sampling sausages. There's a brand new sausage sample session on there. Yesterday I filmed something to do with Dino's hot dogs. Have you seen those?
No.
In a big jar. You can get them from Tesco's, Sainsbury's.
Are they the
places.
ones that are in brine?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, only take 5 to 7 minutes to heat up in a pan. So you've got kids.
Making me hungry now.
It's a really good thing to actually have. So, yeah, check it out. Prick with a Fork. It's on YouTube. Please subscribe. Won't cost you a penny. It's also on Apple Podcasts and Spotify.
Do sausages get a bad press? Because I think it's the ultimate meal.
I think it is the food of champions. They get a little bit of a bad press because depending on what you buy, and I'm not here to be snobbish about it. If you're on a budget, you buy a budget sausage. A lot of chemicals in there, a lot of preservatives. The legal minimum requirement for pork in this country for a sausage is only 42%. So think about that. 58% is kind of like, whoa, what else is going in there? All right, but that's why I started making my own sausages. But I'm also a realist. Not everyone does that. Not everyone has a farm shop nearby. I live in the wilds of Sussex. I'm lucky enough to do so. So I do a lot of supermarket sampling and stuff. And there's some great brands out there. There's a brand that makes sausages without any nitrates in there, which is better for your body as well. But sausages do get a bad press because you always see these headlines going, oh, bacon and sausages, bad for your health, going to cause cancer. And you just have to dig into that story and realise that you've got to eat a hell of a lot of that kind of stuff before it has that negative effect.
Well, it's a square meal, isn't it? It's protein, it's natural fat. I mean, it's a mashed up pig, isn't it, really?
It is a mashed up pig. And this time of year, nothing beats bangers and mash, right? The ultimate autumnal bowl of food to give you pleasure.
Goodness.
Yeah?
All is good with the world when I've got my bangers and mash. Well, listen, if you're having breakfast this morning, it's great to have your company. Let's have a look at some of those front page stories. We're in this together. Prince Andrew bombshell, Sun on Sunday and Mail on Sunday running this story. Prince Andrew, a problem for the king that won't go away.
Yeah, and if you're King Charles or anyone involved in the royal family, you don't want to read these headlines this morning, but it does appear that Prince Andrew, when he said that he had cut contact with Jeffrey Epstein, when he said he did, it appears he was not necessarily telling the truth, because in the Mail and the Sun today, they've got an email dated Feb the 28th, 2011, several months after he said that he'd had no contact with Epstein, saying the following: "I'm just as concerned for you. Don't worry about me. It would seem we are in this together." And that gives us the Sun's front page this morning. We are in this together and we'll have to rise above it. Otherwise, keep in close touch and we'll play some more soon. That word play is just awful.
It's very, very concerning. It's got chilling implications. He inhabits a 30-bedroom mansion called the Royal Lodge, which is worth tens of millions of pounds. Should the king evict him from this luxurious accommodation?
Well, I don't. Where would he go? This is a question we need to wrestle with.
Council flat in Peckham.
You think that would work?
Yeah, stick him in a high-rise. Let him see how the other half live.
OK, I'm up for it. Let's see what happens. Turn it into a reality TV show.
That would do it. Maybe a motorhome.
Motorhome would be good.
Andrew on wheels.
Andrew on wheels. Well, what strikes me about it, you talk about where he lives. He inhabits this 30 bedrooms, you said?
Yeah.
30-bedroom place. I think he inhabits the mind of a 13-year-old because look at the amount of exclamation marks in that email. Right, that's just bizarre. I mean, I just don't think he really is kind of has a proper grip on being an adult.
Where did it all go wrong for the Queen's favourite son?
I think he was overindulged. That's what I think. I mean, I'm a royalist. I like the royal family. I think King Charles is doing good work. I think William and Kate are showing the modern side of the royals, which needs to happen. I think Andrew, as the kind of, well, he's heir and spare, isn't it? That's the phrase they use. Yeah. He would have been after Charles, kind of someone who's always been on the sidelines, and I think it must be very frustrating to think, well, I'm not going to be king unless something tragic happens, and I think he was overindulged, and consequently we see him behaving in this way.
Front page of Daily Star Sunday. I wouldn't normally have that as my second newspaper to go to in the 7 hour, but it's a conversation we need to have, actually. It's about the murdered paedophile Ian Watkins. Sicko Watkins, throat slashed by lag in jail. Monster murdered. No one's going to mourn his passing, although something of a headache, you could argue, for the prison authorities. This shouldn't be happening on their watch, should it?
No, and I think for me that's the issue. We shouldn't be celebrating anyone's death, but I made the point earlier, and I'll just give a warning here. What I'm about to say is pretty unpalatable to hear, but people do need to hear it. Let's remember that Ian Watkins was serving 35 years for child sex offences, including the attempted rape of a baby. Now, me personally, I'm not going to lose any sleep over the fact that this person is no longer alive. However, the issue we should be talking about, and it's Wakefield Jail, which is dubbed as Monster Mansion, given some of the inmates there. There is an issue regarding the fact that one inmate can kill another.
Most definitely. That's exactly it. And like I say, no one's mourning his passing, but that's an extraordinary oversight, really, and may point to further evidence that our prison system is underfunded.
Yeah.
I don't understand how prisons work. I don't understand how they have mobile phones. I don't understand how they have spice and other illegal narcotics.
I don't understand how. I mean, away from Wakefield, and it's been well documented, there have been attacks recently on prison officers, right, by people who have been convicted of terrorist crimes. And I don't understand how people who clearly do not like this country, or some of the people in it, consequently they've helped people try and murder other people, have been convicted of it, why you would think it's a good idea to allow them access to a knife to chop their vegetables up with, or boiling hot water from a kettle in their cell, or all of which are weapons, right? I think there is a massive problem. I mean, I've seen prison officers interviewed in the past who do feel they don't necessarily get the support that they need to deal with such difficult prisoners, and they feel vulnerable.
Most definitely. There's a lot of sausage love coming in for the show this morning. David in Leatherhead, good morning, Mark. I'm having cheese and Marmite bangers for breakfast.
Oh.
Great show, guys. Mark, does Duncan realise I love sampling sausages? Sounds a bit dodgy this early in the morning.
Well, it is dodgy, I suppose, to someone of a certain mindset. But, we're self-effacing, hence why the podcast on YouTube is called Prick with a Fork.
There you go. Duncan, have you tried the sausage rashers in the supermarket now? Low saturated fat, and they do pork and chicken ones. The pork ones with some added sage are a 10 out of 10. I dare you to find a better sausage.
I have tried those rashers. I will put down a marker. I don't think... What are you laughing at?
I'm laughing at just the whole entire meat conversation.
Chicken sausages, don't go there. Awful.
It's not a sausage. It has to be... It's a misnomer, isn't it?
It's just dreadful.
It's only a sausage if it's pork.
Yeah.
Surely.
Or beef, but definitely not chicken.
Yeah, you like a beef sausage?
Yeah.
Okay, my goodness.
Who doesn't?
I'm a silly sausage for even questioning that. Margaret Thatcher would be 100 today.
Yes.
Would she now be a Reform UK supporter? Sorry, tomorrow. Would she be a Reform UK supporter?
I think so.
Really?
I think so.
That's a bombshell.
Is it?
Is that because they're the true Conservatives now?
I think that's the basis of my answer. I think, there are elements certainly of true conservatism in reform, though not completely, as we talked about earlier, this idea of nationalising stuff and expanding the welfare state. I found it interesting. People were listening earlier. You and I talked about the Conservative Party conference that I went to as a media man, and did at a reform conference in Birmingham a few weeks before. The interesting thing about the Conservative Party conference, and people might have seen this on telly, they had a little a tribute section to Margaret Thatcher, Lady Thatcher. They had 3 of her outfits in glass boxes that people were fawning over, her famous blue suit and stuff like that. And whilst I thought this is great, it's part of Conservative history, it's also a bit worrying that you have to go back 35 years, because of course she resigned in 1990. You're going back that far in time to highlight who was someone who was that great, who turned your party around in many ways. And remember, it was 1975 she became leader of the Conservative Party after Edward Heath, who was just a bit pointless by all purposes, and became Conservative Prime Minister in 1979. She was a trailblazer, right? She was prepared to say things that other people weren't. She was prepared to really ruffle some feathers. And if you watch any of the TV programmes, or indeed the books of her early years, it was a work in progress. And some people have made the comparison alongside Kemi Badenoch. But of course, Kemi Badenoch did not have reform to contend with when Margaret Thatcher was reinventing the Conservative Party.
Listen, Duncan, we always love having your company.
Thank
Come
you.
back and see us again
Always,
soon. The
always.
excellent broadcaster and sausage expert Duncan Barks. Prick with a Fork is the name of his YouTube show. Go and give it a subscribe. Folks, so much to get through. This is not a drill. Don't forget, at 8 a.m, The monologue is back in Dolan's dispatch, the ex-BBC Blue Peter star who says if you're waving the flag, it's because you want Britain to be a white country. That's a lie. And I'll be dealing with him in no uncertain terms, as well as Sir Lenny Henry, who wants reparations, and Gary Neville, who seems to hate everyone. At 8 a.m, I'll be dealing with all of them in no uncertain terms. So much more to get through. But next up, the leadership of one of the country's finest cathedrals have scrawled ugly graffiti all over the walls in order to promote diversity. Meanwhile, another iconic venue has got a silent disco. What's going on at the Church of England? Have they gone woke? We'll get the views of a leading cleric next.
You know more than the Supreme Court?
Well, yes, actually, in this case, yes, I do.
Oh, God. What a moron. What an idiot. I mean, actually, it is a joke that the Supreme Court took 5 years to finally come to the learned conclusion. 5 years they deliberated.
Top legal minds.
And finally they said, you know, what we've worked out is that if you're born like a woman, a female, then you're a woman.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to the show. So much to get through. How do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew? More negative headlines. I'll get reaction from the editor-at-large at the Mail on Sunday shortly. She's got the inside story. But first up, the US President, J.D. Vance, no less, has blasted a new installation by marginalised communities and creatives at Canterbury University. They've daubed graffiti on this iconic building in order to promote diversity. The artwork features red graffiti-style writing on ancient stone walls, posing questions to God. That's right, you heard me right. They got questions for God, such as, why did you create hate when love is far more powerful? This hasn't gone down too well. This, by the way, alongside another story that's bubbling along, which is Durham Cathedral, that's having a silent disco. Is that appropriate for a place of worship? Let's get the views of Canon Brett Murphy. Good morning, sir.
Mark, thank you for having me.
Canon Murphy, lovely to have you on the programme, and we know Sunday's a busy day for you, so we'll keep it snappy. But your reaction to the graffiti at Canterbury Cathedral, is this a smart move?
This is an incredibly foolish move. It's a desecration of the most sacred space, not only for the Church of England, but for the global Anglican communion. So people need to wrap their heads around how important Canterbury Cathedral is and what it symbolises. Since 597 AD, when St Augustine of Canterbury came to convert the English, that has been the seat of the Church of England's essentially spiritual power. And so what they've done is they've gone and push this woke, kind of intersectional, diverse message, and it's very highly politicized stuff, like you just said, which isn't really, well, it's not at all compatible with the traditional teaching of the church. And they've gone and put, well, you know, art's subjective. I don't want to offend people too much, but I think it's really but ugly. But the message behind it is even uglier. And so at a time when the C of E just seems to go and put its foot in its mouth every 2 seconds, this is like the stupidest possible move they could ever do.
What does it tell us, Canon, about the culture of the Church of England in 2025?
So, having crossed swords with them quite a bit, the hierarchy is entirely captured by ideologues, particularly leftist woke ideologues. So they've spent 30, 40 years getting their hands on every single position of power they possibly can. And now they've got the top job with the Archbishop of Canterbury being appointed, a very controversial appointment last week. So a lot of folks sort of hold out hope for the Church of England. There are still good Church of England churches and vicars out there fighting the good fight. But if you understand Anglican polity, you can see that actually once they've got a hold of the levers of power, it's very impossible. It's nigh on to just completely impossible to wrestle those off them.
And why is the appointment of Dame Sarah Mullally, the Right Reverend, Right Honourable Dame Sarah Mullally, such a controversial appointment as Archbishop, do you think?
Well, firstly, she diverts from the Church's ancient teaching on morality and sexuality quite a bit, but also for a lot of Anglicans and a lot of Christians around the world. In fact, the majority of Christians, they don't believe that the Bible teaches a woman can hold the office of a bishop. So they've effectively split the Anglican communion globally. And they knew what they were doing when they made this choice. They've chosen their ideology over the unity of the church. So I think it's now 85% or maybe even 90% of global Anglicans have decided they don't recognise her leadership at all. So they've basically cooked the Anglican communion in one foul swoop.
And what is this slightly sort of wokeward direction that the Church of England have taken? What impact is it having on congregation numbers and on general engagement with the church, do you think? I mean, is it working? Because it's an effort, isn't it, to attract younger people? Will that be, you know, effective?
So it's desperation, and they've been at it since about the 90s. And what actually happens is it causes decline, an increased decline. Things like the rave at Durham, these things have been going on for a little while. The helter-skelter in another cathedral.
There's also been crazy golf, I think, in another
there was,
church.
Yeah. There's just this lame sort of gimmicky attempt to get public engagement. But what we see in all mission statistics, literally almost every mission statistic that is measured by the church, is that good old-fashioned plain Bible teaching, good old-fashioned Christian values are what attracts people. It's not becoming more and more and more woke and increasingly trying to appeal to the young'uns, because frankly a lot of young people just see this crap as cringe. They just think this is stupid. I could go and get that at an art gallery. Why would I want that at church?
Well, indeed, it feels like an institution that hates itself in some ways.
It does, yeah. They're very much like a lot of sort of woke lefty thinking. There's sort of a suicidal empathy to their thinking, so they think if they just push further and further into these ideologies, somewhere along the way something will go right. And a lot of them are just crusaders. They are convinced that they are correct, and they're so blinded by their belief that this sort of far left stuff that they push is correct, they can't see that actually what they're doing is literally killing the church they're supposed to be representing.
Is there a way back for the Church of England, or do you think that people that worship God will be going to perhaps more small C conservative venues in the future?
I think in the short term, people are hemorrhaging to smaller, particularly Anglicans, independent Anglican groupings like GAFCON or the Anglican Church Traditional. But in the longer term, I mean, miracles are possible, right? I have to say that. In a sort of possible conservative or whatever government in the future, I mean small c conservative, because it is the established church, if the will of the parliament was to turn it back to some sort of sanity, then it could possibly be forced to turn to sanity. But if left to its own devices, unfortunately, I think it's just going to hang itself on its own petard.
Yes, it looks like a race to the bottom, doesn't it? And it's happened in the Roman Catholic Church as well, with the last two popes, again, being pretty progressive in their politics, which is not really what people go to the Catholic Church for.
Well, no, people don't want to go to see a block of ice blessed by the pontiff.
They really don't, do they? How is general Christianity in the UK at the moment? I mean, do we know whether it's in broad decline, or are there certain parts of the religion that are seeing, increasing take-up?
So I explain it to people that there's a sort of a real and a counterfeit Christianity. A lot of mainline denominations like the C of E, Methodists, they have been captured by ideologues like we were discussing. And they're declining hand over fist. Churches sold at record numbers all over the country. But in terms of churches that have stayed true to the ancient doctrines of the church, the simple teaching of the Bible, those churches are growing. So my little church in Morecambe has gone from 2 people to 80 people in just 2.5 years.
Wow!
And because we just do what we've always done. We do what we say in the tin. We're a Christian church.
Well, that's a brilliant place to be practicing, because Morecambe is a beautiful seaside town in Lancaster. Lovely scenery, lovely landscape, and I guess an engaged local population. You must be having fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Plenty of people who come and rip flags off our church, but plenty more people who come along and hear the good news and engage. And we do a lot of community outreach. So I think churches that are faithful to the Bible, but churches that also engage with their community, so feed the homeless, care for those in need, they grow because they're doing literally what we're told to do in the Bible, and that's what people look for. If they want something that looks like the world, they'll go to the world. But if the church is otherworldly and the church is sacred and set apart, which is kind of why the Canterbury thing's so offensive, because they're bringing this extreme worldliness into the most sacred side of Anglicanism, then people just walk. They just vote with their feet. They don't want to hang around with that.
No, and the current administration have no right to desecrate a building like that with all its history and its stunning architecture. Simon says, bottom line, who is letting this happen to religious places of worship in Britain? Discipline them, whatever level they may be. Chris says, good morning, Mark. In many cases, the church is far too forgiving for modern times. So this wokeness will only drive people away. The more you look at religion, it's the cause of many issues in the world, sadly. That's Chris in West Sussex. Can I ask you your thoughts on gender identity ideology, the idea that some people are born in the wrong body, the idea that somebody with a penis can be a woman? What is, based upon your theology, what is your answer to that? What is your response to the idea that men can be women?
It's providential you ask that, because the artist behind the Canterbury debacle, in fact, is a fellow in a dress. God makes us in his own image, male and female. Genesis tells us he makes us in his own image. So those are immutable characteristics that can't be changed. So people might like to live as the opposite sex, but they can never actually change their sex or gender. It's a fantasy. And actually, I think we see from a lot of secular studies that this is exceptionally difficult. It's a very unhealthy way to live for people. The suicide rates, even after transition, are through the roof. And the rate of people who detransition is increasing every single year, and they don't get a lot of support. So I think the normal Christian response, the traditional Christian response, is to say we love everybody, but we don't accept certain things people do because the Bible tells us that those things are not compatible with God's word. And the trans stuff is definitely in that category. And the worrying trend of a lot of the trans stuff to target children and youth is also a grave concern for Christians.
Canon Brett Murphy, a delight to have you on the programme. I look forward to catching up in the near future. A fascinating conversation. Your reaction, please, 0344 499 1000. Are you a practising Christian? Let me know your thoughts about the direction of the church. Next up, here's $1 million question. How do you solve a problem like Prince Andrew? Should the King turf him out of his 30-bedroom Royal Lodge accommodation? We'll get the views of the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday next.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So what has happened to Bournemouth? In a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll find out the full devastating impact of illegal immigration in a once idyllic British seaside town. That's a Talk Breakfast exclusive in just a few minutes' time. And don't forget Dolan's dispatch at 8 o'clock. Woke, cocaine-loving BBC star attacks white people. What's going on with the world? But first up, let's have a look at a massive story in the Mail on Sunday today. World exclusive. Day after they published infamous photo of Duke and his accuser that he wants us to believe is fake, and long after he claims to have cut ties with a convicted paedophile, a very revealing email. Prince Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. It's a massive story. Let's get reaction from the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday, the wonderful and one and only Charlotte Griffiths. Charlotte, welcome to Talk. What's the story here?
Well, it's that Andrew said that he'd cut off all contact with Epstein, and of course he didn't. You know, much like Fergie the other day, Fergie said that Epstein was her supreme friend when she had apparently just told the world that she hated him and cut all contact with him. And now, of course, we find out that Andrew's done the same. And not only that, but he said that, you know, they'll play together soon. So actually he had intention to see him again, despite famously saying in 2019's Newsnight that he went to New York. Do you remember those infamous pictures of him talking with Epstein? There they are.
Going for a lovely walk in Central Park in their very smart sort of, you know, American apparel. Best mates.
Best mates. And then he said, no, that was just a breakup chat to Emily Maitlis. But of course, he then stayed in New York for 4 days at the time, which was slightly unconvincing breakup. And now we know definitively he sent an email saying, we'll play together soon. And also saying we'll rise above all this media backlash, because at the time, the Mail on Sunday had printed a picture of Andrew with Virginia Giuffre, with his arm around her. He's always claimed it's fake. My theory is, now we've seen that email, wouldn't he have said, wouldn't the first email you would have sent if you were Prince Andrew to Epstein would be, whoa, there's a fake photo out there. Where's this come from? But instead he said, oh, looks like we're in this together, which is a little bit suspicious if you ask me.
How much more damage can Andrew do to the royal family, or is the fact that he's a liability now priced in?
I think you're right. The fact his liability is priced in, but each email, each new revelation that comes is more and more embarrassing. The Supreme Friend one, which was only a few weeks ago, they're still completely reeling from that. And now there's this one. And I do think William, for one, is concerned that it could get worse. And I have to say, I always think it can't get worse, and it always does. So I think William might be right on the money there. The only option they have now is to cut him off stone cold. As you say, possibly even a council flat in Streatham. Definitely not a 30-room house, 30-room royal lodge, a prestigious property, on the Great Windsor estate, which is actually bigger and more magnificent than Prince William's new place.
There you go. So that's about the only lever left at Charles's disposal as king, is to evict his brother from the royal lodge. There's not too much else he can do, is there? Because he's lost HRH. He's no longer a frontline serving royal, and I think it would take an act of parliament to strip him of his dukedom.
Yes, they could. They could strip him of his dukedom, as you say. It would take an act of parliament. They could take away his garter. He's a knight of the garter. And what I found so interesting about this Epstein email is that he signed it off, KG, Knight of the Garter. So he's obviously very proud of this honour. He got it in 2006. So they could strip that away from him. But also they could have a stern word, which I think they might have already done, about Andrew turning up at royal funerals, Christmas church services. He can't be seen in any of these events, and he can't be pictured with William. And the Duchess of Kent's funeral, he was pictured standing next to William. William looked like he wanted the ground to swallow him up.
And he was cracking jokes.
And he was joking around. He has no self-awareness. He obviously thinks he's completely innocent. I have to say, this new email makes him seem less innocent than ever before, really, because the photo now doesn't seem to be fake. The Mail and Sun has been saying this for years. That photo is not fake. So I guess the current strategy is he's been told to be, quote, invisible. And I think he's got to be somehow even more invisible. If I were him, I would also go and do some charity work. Now, a lot of charities have distanced themselves from Fergie and probably wouldn't exactly want Andrew being their face, but he could just do some charitable activities. Instead, he plays golf, he goes shooting, he goes riding in full view of the British press and cameras. But he needs to do less of that. He needs to grow some self-awareness and live a more discreet life.
Yes, I think so. I think he should be in our city centres doing community service, perhaps removing graffiti from the walls or perhaps from your nearest cathedral. Perhaps he could be using one of those power sprays, those pressure washers, to get gum off the pavement. That would be a good use of his time. There is an issue for Charles, though, isn't there, Charlotte, which is internal family politics. If the king pushes the prince too far, his brother Andrew, then he could run off to America and do a Harry, write a book, a TV show, and spill the beans on the family.
I suppose he could. Andrew's got an amazing reputation in one tiny solitary respect. He never, ever slags off the royal family in private, behind Charles's back, in the press, anywhere. He is squeaky clean on that one front. So it would be explosive if he did. I think King Charles probably knows he wouldn't, because there's one thing Andrew believes in, it's the institution of the monarchy.
What if he's got no... What if he's been banished and he's angry and he's got no skin in the game? Plus, money's a motivating factor. I mean, you are there in the world of newspaper publishing. He would make millions, wouldn't he, if he wrote a book?
He would, and he is desperate for money because Fergie's just sold her £4 million Muse house in Belgravia. So
at a loss.
Very unexpected.
At a loss, because they're such great entrepreneurs, aren't they?
Well, exactly, at a loss, which does show they are desperate for money. So maybe, I suppose, if Oprah came a-knocking, Fergie's been there before, Andrew might do it. I think it's unlikely, but as you say, money and desperation create all sorts of bizarre scenarios. So maybe you're right to caution King Charles not to push his brother too far. But I think all King Charles wants his brother to do is move to Frogmore Cottage. It's not exactly a hovel. Meghan and Harry spent £2.4 million doing it up not so long ago. And he just wants him to not barge his way to the front of funerals, royal funerals, laughing and joking with Prince William. That's not the kind of thing that Andrew should be angry about. Andrew should have some modicum of self-awareness and should be doing this anyway. He should be understanding his position naturally. It's just he cannot do so because he doesn't have a self-aware bone in his body.
He doesn't. Before we let you go, Charlotte, an interesting story in today's Sunday Times. King tells Harry end security row. The Duke of Sussex's renewal of his battle with the government over personal security risks derailing his reconciliation with the King. Sources close to Charles said that Harry's decision to lobby the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, asking for his taxpayer-funded security in the UK to be reviewed, complicates things for the King. Do you think that Harry will let this one go and accept that he's not going to have armed protection when he's in Britain?
I don't think Harry will ever let it go because he personally has seen a list of people who want to attack him, and he's very, very worried about it. And his mother died in a car crash in Paris, and he is absolutely not budging. What is surprising is that he's asked for another risk assessment because he knows that if he gets a risk assessment, he will definitely get police protection. So it's very unlikely he will get the risk assessment. And he knows it will wind his father up and those famous men in grey suits around his father. So it is an antagonistic move. But, you know, it's no surprise in some ways to Charles because Harry's made it very clear that he's obsessed about his security and his wife's safety, and he can't bring his wife over unless he has police protection. But I thought it was very interesting, those quotes in the Times, because they do sound like the kind of quotes that would come from one of these men in grey suits. They basically say, this is a bit of a setback. You know, we know Charles and Harry have met up recently, but because he's asked for security again, all this puts Charles in a very difficult position. That's the kind of thing that will rile Harry up no end, because it's the opinion of a man in a grey suit rather than, you know, possibly rather than King Charles's opinion. And that's exactly the kind of thing that makes Harry furious. So it could be that a row is brewing again.
Brilliant stuff. Charlotte, let me tell you that you've delivered a great paper today. This is today's Mail on Sunday, and it's a cracking exclusive upon which I congratulate you. Andrew to Epstein, we are in this together. Look forward to catching up soon. Have a great Sunday, Charlotte. My thanks to the editor-at-large of the Mail on Sunday newspaper. Next up, the full devastating effect of illegal immigration in Britain. In a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we'll be looking at what's happened to the much-loved and once idyllic seaside town of Bournemouth. That's the inside story of the collapse of Bournemouth as a result of illegal immigration next.
You know more than the Supreme Court?
Well, yes, actually, in this case, yes, I do.
Oh, God.
What a moron. What an idiot. I mean, actually, it is a joke that the Supreme Court took 5 years to finally come to the learned conclusion. 5 years they deliberated.
Top legal minds.
And finally they said, you know, what we've worked out is that if you're born like a woman, a female, then you're a woman.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, a very busy morning. Don't forget, in just 10 minutes' time, this is not a drill. The monologue is back. Cocaine-loving ex-BBC star Richard Bacon slams people waving the flag as wanting a white country. That's a lie. I'll be dealing with him in no uncertain terms. But first up, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, the devastating impact of illegal immigration on the once idyllic seaside town of Bournemouth. Just what has happened in that remarkable and unique location. Let's get the views of a man very close to this story. Norman Brennan, former police officer and director of the Law and Order Foundation and founder of Knives Destroy Lives. Norman, great to have you on the show. Welcome to Talk Breakfast. You know Bournemouth very well.
Yeah, I certainly do. When I was a serving police officer, I was on a major incident room after the Clapham train crash, and I was one of two detectives that was assigned to go to Bournemouth, and I took dozens of statements over several weeks. And it was coming up to Christmas, but one thing that stuck out was what a lovely area. It was clean, it was tidy, it was friendly, rarely saw any crime, liaised with the local police, they were always about, there weren't major issues, and it was a lovely, idyllic seaside town. I actually bought, with a friend of mine, a holiday let in Southbourne, which is 1 mile from Bournemouth, and I had that for a number of years up until about 12, 13 years ago. And I regularly visited Bournemouth and stayed at the Marriott. I deal with homicide, and even when I was a police officer, I used to look after homicide families, so I often went down from Twickenham, where I live, to stay in Bournemouth, and it was lovely. Nothing could be further from the truth now. It's not just illegal migrants, but illegal migrants that are there in 3 particular hotels have caused absolute havoc throughout the town. Businesses, people that live there and people that visit there regularly tell me now it's a shadow of its old self, and they don't feel safe and they don't enjoy visiting it. And that must be very worrying for the tourist trade that cover Bournemouth.
Most definitely. Dan from Kent has messaged in, Norman. Bournemouth used to be a hub for stag and hen weekends, but not now. No hotels to stay in. And this from Mark, who says, good morning, I live near Bournemouth. If I have to go into the town, I always go in the mornings before midday. It feels quite safe and relaxed at that point. Afternoons are not so good, and quite a few dodgy looking individuals hanging around. Evenings and nighttime, I never go near the place, ever.
Well, I think it epitomises what many towns in Britain have become due to illegal migration. It's the topic that the government tried to avoid by calling all of us, and I have a concern myself about what I see and hear. I report on major crime daily about the devastation that illegal migration causes Britain. Now, getting back to Bournemouth, the stabbings have gone through the roof. Rapes have gone through the roof. Antisocial behaviour is out of control. And as I said, people don't feel safe. And I'm regularly told, sadly, but it's not a one-off concern, that the locals rarely ever see the police. I know Dorset Police, or I know Dorset very well indeed. My ex-partner lives in Weymouth. I sorted out the house that they bought down there, and I went and stayed many times. And all I kept hearing about was how the illegals that were walking the streets made young girls feel unsafe. That we had the Bibby barge at Portland that caused absolute uproar. Now, when you live in Britain, we know that there will be crime. We know that there will be issues. However, when these are imported issues, and not imported that we want, that are causing this sort of disruption, where there are murders, stabbing, acid attacks, rapes, young girls being attacked, abused, insulted, shoplifting has gone through the roof, along with all the other crimes in Bournemouth, one has got to say enough is enough. And that is why I understand a number of locals have put together what is called a safeguard team. That's where they walk the streets during the day and at night to try and keep their fellow citizens safe. What does that say about policing and the criminal justice system around Bournemouth? And I'm actually representing PC Lawn Castle. You may recall he was the Dorset officer that was sacked for showing disrespect. Well, showing disrespect for doing his job, that shows how detached Dorset Police are from policing, and the finger must be pointed straight at Dorset Police and their police crime commissioner. I understand how it all works. I've been in policing and law and order for 46 years. They talk a good job, but they're not doing a good job. And these statistics must shame Dorset and the PCC, David Sidgwick, that covers it. He's not even a police officer. He is a politician, just like every other police and crime commissioner. And the responsibility is on their shoulders. And I'm afraid most of them are clueless. They haven't got the officers to do what they need to do. And when you look at all the results of courts of those that have committed all these serious crimes, most of them actually walk. And what they do, they walk straight back to the hotels to carry on with their criminality the following day.
Well, most definitely. If you live in Bournemouth or know the area and seen it change, give me a call, 0344 499 1000. I'd love to know what your experience of this once great town is. I used to take holidays there on an almost annual basis with my family, 3 or 4 nights in one of those lovely hotels, including the Royal Bath Hotel, which used to be an incredible luxury location and is now an absolute dump. It's a complete eyesore. What are your emotions, Norman, when you think back to the 1950s, the 60s, the 70s, and even the 80s, when Bournemouth was such a beautiful place to visit?
Well, Bournemouth has become pretty much like what I say, Mark, and many other people around Britain, is that we don't recognise our country anymore. We're told what to think, what to say, what to do. We don't feel safe in areas where we once were safe. And Bournemouth was just lovely. I mean, I'm here condemning it. And when I was talking about yesteryear, when I used to visit there, it's a beautiful county. It's a small county. I know some of the police down there. It's like a family police force. But sadly, just like every other police force in Britain, it hasn't got the staff to do what it does or what it needs to do. The police leadership down there is absolutely atrocious. I used to know the police leadership down there. I used to know the last chief constable. He's been called out of retirement now to Police Devon and Cornwall. James Vaughan, a decent guy. And when I was speaking to him a few years ago, because I was actually going to stand to be the Police and Crime Commissioner, I wish I didn't have to come back to London and could have stood. Otherwise, Bournemouth and certainly the county of Dorset would have had a formidable police commissioner that knows about crime, knows the devastation that crime causes on victims, knows about what needs to be safe on the streets, and also would have challenged the courts when they were failing to back up my officers and also the people that live in Bournemouth and the Dorset area. And it just epitomises that this is a country, and Bournemouth is part of our country, that many people that live there, that work there and visit there are now saying, we don't recognise it anymore, we don't want to visit it, we don't want to come back. And many people that are living there are looking at getting out, they're looking at moving. When their friends come to stay, instead of saying, let's go down to the lovely beaches in Boscombe, Southbourne, the Chines. They're actually saying there are certain areas we need to be careful of, and perhaps we should go somewhere else. What does that say about the beautiful town of Bournemouth, where people don't feel safe, and sadly, rightly so?
Yes, Janet in Eastbourne has said, Mark, what's happened to Bournemouth has happened to Eastbourne and seaside towns all over the southeast. Mark, Andy from Mansfield. Mark, many years ago I went to Bournemouth for a Police Federation conference, and as Norman says, it was a lovely little town. My contingent and I thought it was a good place for retirement. I've not been for some years, but now here it's a dangerous dump. Paul says we go to the Pavilion in Bournemouth for shows. We drive in, see the show, drive out again. Bournemouth has become a cesspool. So sad to see this lovely place destroyed. And Gary, hi Mark, we've been travelling the world since March. We stayed in Bournemouth and Brighton before we left. They were the unsafest places we've stayed in, and that includes the USA. Mick in Wallington. Bournemouth used to be a venue for union and public sector conferences, filling the hotels no more. Can this be reversed? Can we get towns like Bournemouth back?
I'll tell you what can be reversed is we stop illegal migration at sea. Rupert Lowe, I've just supported his petition of these boats being stopped in the Channel, being documented there, and within 24 hours being conveyed under border control escort and flown away from Britain to thousands of miles away. We can actually stop that. And what we've already got issues with, Mark, is lack of police officers on the streets of Britain. We also have a criminal justice system that is broken. They're more like social workers than those that are tasked to keep us safe and punish those that continue to commit crime. But whilst we have got our own problems, we are now inbreeding into this country those are invading us, and not just in their hundreds, but in their tens of thousands. And as we can see, we've got 3 hotels in Bournemouth that used to be full of people enjoying their holidays, their weekend breaks, their breaks for honeymoon couples, and they now will shun that area.
It's
and
devastating. It's devastating. Norman, thank you for that. Next up, woke BBC star calls flag wavers racist. That's next.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going round that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I do, mate, I shove a 5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed, and very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner. Says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed whack the rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Yeah, moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine the scouts to say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Rise and shine. It is 3 minutes past 8. Your weekend starts here. It is Talk Breakfast. A big 2 hours to come. I'm Mark Dolan, and coming up, welcome to the madhouse, the Reform UK councillor who said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland, something that you should be proud to say, born and bred. Well, she's now to face a police investigation for saying she's born and bred in Scotland. Well, a free speech lawyer has been advising her, and he joins us on the show shortly. Margaret Thatcher would be turning 100 tomorrow. So if she was here today, what would she make of modern Britain? What would she have to say about Sir Keir Starmer? Can you imagine her facing him at the dispatch box? No, no, no. Would Margaret Thatcher now be a reform supporter? What would she think of net zero? What would she think of border control? Would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? I'll be asking Fleet Street legend, a man that interviewed Thatcher on many occasions, the titan of journalism that is Trevor Kavanagh. My priority for the next 2 hours is getting your opinions on the national airwaves. My number is 0344 499 1000. Tommy is on the phones today. Give him a call and text your message and the word talk to 87222. It's all about opinions. We're on the radio via DAB+. We're online. We're in-app. And you can watch the show. Just search Talk on YouTube and up we pop. So much to get through. A big 2 hours to come. Don't forget Trevor Kavanagh at exactly 9 o'clock. And by the way, Christopher Biggins, showbiz legend, will reveal the results of his fat jab treatment. He's been on the Ozempic. He shall reveal all, not literally, I hope. It's a family show at 9:15. So lots to get through, as they say, let's talk. And we begin, as always, at this time in the show with Dolan's Dispatch. I do hope the ex-BBC Blue Peter presenter Richard Bacon is not back on the cocaine. This former high-profile aficionado of the invigorating white powder, such a perennial favourite over at Auntie, has blasted proud British patriots in the ongoing flag row by saying, and I quote, "If you stick a pole and a Union Jack tomorrow outside your house, I think you're making a statement, which is probably that you'd prefer Britain to be more white." Let me be clear that that's a lie. That is a lie. And it is a libel and a slander on the British people. But it's typical of an ex-BBC star. Welcome to day 377 of Everything is Racist. The countryside is racist. Mathematics is racist. Turning up to work on time is racist. Leaving the tea bag in the cup after you've put the milk in. Racist, racist, racist. It's so boring. And it doesn't work anymore. And here's the thing, it lets real racists off the hook. But tackling genuine racism, which we all despise, isn't what interests the likes of Richard Bacon. This rant, ironically broadcast on the BBC, how appropriate, was just another opportunity for a multi-millionaire lefty to sneer at anyone who dares to love their country and who fears that our national identity is under threat, which of course it is. And national identity is essential for a successful country. You have to have it. Ask the Ukrainians. But through the woke lens of people like Bacon, patriotism is basically Nazi Germany. And that brings me to Gary Neville. His response to the horrific Islamist attack on a Manchester synagogue was to suggest that it was in some strange, indirect way the fault of angry, middle-aged white men. Here we go again! Now, this is Gary Neville, a journeyman right-back who got lucky in a great team with a great manager, and a man who's made millions from the very supporters he now casually smears. Hard-working men who have forked out for tickets and football shirts and Sky subscriptions, lads who graft all week and are paid a fraction of Neville's hourly rate to watch him play football or to hear him pontificate on the beautiful game. And what was their great crime? The great crime of these people that wave the flag in this country, that love their country. Well, that was it. Flying the flag of their country out of pride is a crime in 2025, according to these woke celebrities. And yes, they're flying the flag out of pride, but they are also flying the flag as a protest against a Britain changing beyond recognition at an alarming rate that no one voted for. And let's be clear, this is the most important part of today's Dolan's dispatch. Are you ready for this? Let me be very clear that this concern about Britain's collapsing national identity is not about skin colour, because this is a concern shared by Brits of all backgrounds, the length and breadth of the country, because it's about identity, tradition, history and values. Most people across all ethnicities think that what's happening to Britain is mad. And that's why I predict that Reform UK will win a colossal landslide in 3 years' time on a multi-ethnic vote. You heard it here first, because everyone thinks that what's happening to Britain is mad, with the exception of a few multi-millionaire celebrities. But Neville, who profits handsomely from the efforts of these so-called angry middle-aged white men who build his hotels and luxury developments, says that people flying the Union Jack know exactly what they're doing. He's implying, when he says they know exactly what they're doing, he's implying hate. And the irony is that it's woke celebrities like him who are actually the ones consumed by hate themselves. Hate in particular for their fellow countrymen. Why else would you equate innocent patriotic lads with an Islamist terror attack? Make it make sense. The contempt from the likes of Richard Bacon and Gary Neville for ordinary people is palpable. I watched Neville's video very carefully. The anger in his eyes was striking. My view is that these people aren't well. They've been radicalised. They've been brainwashed. They're not happy. They're not right in the head. Gary Neville may have avoided injuries on the pitch as a footballer, but right now he's been struck down by the devastating woke mind virus. It's turned him into an extremely unpleasant little man. Alongside Carol Vorderman and others, of course, this is a man who helped deliver Labour's victory at the last election, serving as Keir Starmer's biggest cheerleader. Do you remember that sickly bromance video he did with Starmer during the election? Nauseating, and of course it's aged very badly, given the massive damage being done to the country by his mate Sir Keir. Speaking of sirs, Sir Lenny Henry. Wow. Sir Lenny Henry. A resolutely unentertaining man who's somehow stolen a living for 4 decades alongside his ex-wife and Hamas fangirl Dawn French, who effectively cancelled herself with a video making light of October the 7th, the biggest single attack on Jews since the Holocaust, in which she mocked Hamas's atrocities in a comedy voice. Sir Lenny Henry, another multimillionaire progressive who wants Britain to pay £17 trillion, you heard me right, £17 trillion in slavery reparations. 17 trillion. Well, if we're doing reparations, my family are Irish, so can we have a few quid for the potato famine? It was more than slavery in terms of recent years. It was more recent than slavery. Will I be getting a cheque for the potato famine as a Dolan? Maybe the Italians should cough up for the Roman Empire, or the Greeks for their period of global domination. If we're doing reparations, can we all have compensation for the PTSD that we've suffered from sitting through the Lenny Henry show in the 1990s, or his cringeworthy comic relief stints, where even struggling kids in Africa look more depressed when he turns up? What's wrong with these people? What is wrong with Gary Neville? What is wrong with Richard Bacon? What is wrong with Sir Lenny Henry, who thinks Britain should pay £17 trillion in reparations? Slavery, a wicked and unforgivable crime, was the norm for thousands of years. Britain, at huge cost in terms of blood and treasure, ended it. So I'd go the other way. I think that the world should pay Britain reparations. That's right. For the Industrial Revolution, for parliamentary democracy, the rule of law, free speech, the modern court system, and the millions that we spent ending the slave trade. We should get reparations for the infrastructure that we built overseas, the railways, the irrigation, the factories, the schools, during the colonial era. Where's our big fat cheque for that massive investment? I'd like some money for William Shakespeare, please. Charles Dickens, J.K. Rowling, the Beatles, and Sir Elton John. And yes, I think we should get a few quid for the popular 1970s dessert Angel Delight, but that's another story. Now, of course, I say much of this in jest, because the past is the past. Good things happened, bad things happened. You move on. But when someone like Sir Lenny Henry tries to damage this country so egregiously, with ideas like ruinous and insane reparations for generations long gone, I can only assume that he hates this country and therefore hates you. This is the same Lenny Henry, by the way, who complained about the lack of diversity at the Glastonbury Festival. Who goes to a music festival and counts the ethnic faces? Wouldn't that be racist? Isn't focusing on skin colour wrong? I'm so confused. Make it make sense. Engineer Dave, I need some help. Richard Bacon, Lenny Henry, Gary Neville, all rich, all narcissistic, all bitter, all out of touch, and all infected by the woke mind virus. I can only conclude that the millionaire elites do hate Britain and do hate you. As far as I'm concerned, ex-footballer Gary Neville should be shown the red card for his appalling remarks. Alleged comedian Lenny Henry should be booed off the stage. And as for Richard Bacon, well, this well-publicised consumer of the Colombian marching powder should be given his marching orders. All of these champagne socialists can take a hike. Your reaction, 03444991000. I can't believe that Sir Lenny Henry, a knight of the realm, should seek to bankrupt this country with the insane idea of the reparations. And then Richard Bacon, ex-coke snorting BBC presenter, who thinks if you've got the flag, you want the country to be white. That is a lie. Your reaction, especially if you don't agree, 03444991000. What do you think of Richard Bacon? What do you think of Gary Neville? What do you think of Sir Lenny Henry? Are they right in the head? It's all about opinions. Get yours on the radio and on TV. Richard's done just that. Richard's in Poole. Now, Richard, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we spoke to a former police officer who knows Bournemouth intimately well and has revealed in great detail in the last hour the devastating effect of illegal immigration on this once idyllic seaside town. What do you know of what's happening in Bournemouth?
Well, you can ask me anything you like about it, but I'll tell you one thing about that police officer. He doesn't actually live here. If you live here, you will see exactly what is going on.
Yeah.
None of my friends and family will go into Bournemouth anymore. The whole place has gone down. You've had department stores like Bill's and House of Fraser closed down and turned into flats. You've had lots of shops closed down, and in the same time, you've had a lot of undocumented illegal immigrants moving into the hotels, especially the Britannia Hotel in Bournemouth, which I went to a demo because when I was walking down the street, there was a young girl who was 14 years old, and I'm in between Poole and Bournemouth in Parkstone. There was a young girl at a bus stop in her school uniform with a short skirt on, going to school, and a car pulled up full of illegal immigrants, and they started shouting sexual abuse to her across the street and saying, come over, and all this. So I intervened, and I stopped, and I phoned the police, and the police did not want to know.
Because they're overrun. How many hotels are accommodating illegal immigrants at the moment?
3 at the moment.
And those are good-sized hotels, so that's definitely hundreds of men.
There's a few hundred people in each hotel.
Oh, so it could be upwards of 1,000 illegal immigrants in Bournemouth then?
Yeah, but it's not just in Bournemouth, it's spreading into Poole now as well. You go into Poole and you see more and more of it every time you go in there.
Richard, why do you think the authorities chose areas like Poole and Bournemouth?
I don't know why they've chosen it. Maybe it's because, there's a lot of in and out coming people, for the holiday seasons and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're in a local, village in Wiltshire or something, you'll notice it even more.
It's devastating, isn't it? Can I ask you, Richard, is it exclusively the issue of the migrant hotels, or is it part of a pattern of decline in Britain's towns and cities?
It's a part of both. It's declined because of the economics of the country and everything like that, and bringing in all these people as well who don't contribute, who don't make the country any better, they just bring it down.
Most definitely. And did you grow up in the area, Richard?
No, I grew up in East London, then I moved to Essex, then I moved down here.
And you've seen it change over the years?
I've seen everything change, especially the East London where I come from.
Well, that's right. East London has basically, you could argue it's an example of our failed multicultural experiment.
Yeah, and this is going to spread. The more people, what used to happen in the old days was when, I don't care what people call me for saying this, but when immigrants moved into the local area, it lowered the tone of the neighbourhood, so they moved out, all right? And when they moved out, they thought, all right, this is a nice little place, we'll stay here. Now, that invasion sort of thing is coming to their local area as well. There's nowhere else for them to move, so they have to stand up and make their voices heard.
Richard, is there a difference between the people that come to this country, work hard, learn the language, follow the customs and traditions?
I have no problem with that. If you're going to come here, I've been abroad, I've worked abroad and things like that. I've learned the local language when I've gone abroad. I have no problem with that whatsoever. If you want to come here and contribute and work and be British, celebrate my culture, my history, I have no problem with you whatsoever. But it's not like that.
Richard, are towns like Bournemouth lost forever, or could a future administration fix this?
Well, my honest opinion is I think this country might be too late forever. No matter who gets into government next time, if it's reform or something like that, I don't know. But I think we've gone too far down the rat hole to come back.
If we were to unilaterally end illegal immigration and bring legal net migration down to just essential numbers, do you think the country could regroup and recover?
Yeah, but there'll be a lot of problems. There will be a lot of problems to do that.
A legacy of what's happened.
Yeah, because like I've said before, on your to Mike Graham, you know, it's oh, I don't know. I've lost my thought of train now. Sorry.
Are you, Richard? Are you? I think I can hear the emotion in your voice.
Yeah, I do. I get fed up with it because I see it every day. It's down my local street. Every time I step out on the street, I see crime and disintegration of society and everything, you know. People worried about walking down the street, a lady worried about walking her dog down through the fields and things like that, you know.
Do you feel that you've lost the country that you loved?
Yes. It's not the country that I was brought up in. When I went to school, we sang the Lord's Prayer at Assembly and we learnt about Britishness and things like that, and it's all just gone.
Do you try to be positive about it, Richard? Because, you know, most of us are not in a position to emigrate. Do you think we can just roll our sleeves up and get on with it? How do we move forward?
We need proper politicians to start with. We need people at the helm to, like, lead this country properly and stick to its core values of what we are and what made us, instead of trying to dilute everything and change everything to, like, what I call loony left-wing views.
Richard, I think every single politician in this country should listen to this interview, listen to this call, and I'm going to get my executive producer, Dean, to get this online, and let's get it viral, and let's get the message out there. I'm privileged to have had you on the show, and I do hope, Richard, we speak again. Stay positive, big man. Everyone hears the emotion in your voice, and we all know that things are not right. There will be a legacy of damage, but what we must do at this point is stop further damage, wake up and understand that borders are there for a reason, and that Britain has traditions and values which are precious, and when they're gone, they're gone. Richard, you take care of yourself, and I'm delighted that you called me.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mark.
Take care, Chief. There you go. What a tough call to take, but an important one. I think that will spark a conversation. Your reaction to what Richard's had to say. Do you disagree, by the way? Is diversity our strength? Would you like to open the border so we can have those care workers and NHS staff? It's all about opinions. I want to hear yours. 0344 499 1000. More on this next.
You know more than the Supreme Court?
Well, yes, actually, in this case, yes, I do.
Oh, God.
What a moron. What an idiot. I mean, actually, it is a joke that the Supreme Court took 5 years to finally come to the learned conclusion. 5 years they deliberated.
Top legal minds.
And finally they said, you know, what we've worked out is that if you're born like a woman, a female, then you're a woman.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Former cocaine-snorting BBC star Richard Bacon has said if you wave the flag in this country, it means that you want the country to be white. That's a lie, and I called it out in today's Dolan's Dispatch, which has made a massive splash on the programme this morning. Anne, brilliant, Mark, you've nailed it. And how about this from Scooby Sue, who says, Mark, please remind Lenny Henry that the British people have already donated millions and millions to countries that he feels we've damaged through children in need that he fronted. Ungrateful, shallow-minded fool. That's from Sue. And how about this from David? Mark, I love your Dolan's Dispatch. It's very true. These champagne socialists need to get a life. But oh, and he likes my tie today. Well, thank you for that. If you're watching on YouTube, you'll see what I'm wearing. Just go to YouTube and search Talk. But a big reaction to my call from Richard in Poole about the devastating impact of migrant hotels on Bournemouth and the surrounding area. And this from Sally, who in London says, hi, Mark. Richard's call has made me cry because he's 100% correct and it's just so sad. Hi, says Anthony, I just emigrated from the UK. I also lived in East London and can relate to Richard. I'd love to chat live to Mark Dolan. Well, Anthony, let's do that. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Richard has, Dan in Kent has said, Mark, a fantastic call by Richard in Poole. That is what Talk is all about. Sandra in Essex, hi, Mark, any hotel given over to the government for housing illegal migrants should be boycotted if they return to normal hotel use. John says, hi Mark, Bournemouth became a city of sanctuary a few years ago to make illegal refugees welcome and encourage additional support. Weston-super-Mare stopped being a council of sanctuary a few weeks ago. The public, supported by local Reform UK members, stopped it. It can be done. Let's get reaction now from two good friends of mine. We have Reem Ibrahim, who's the communications manager at IEA, and the outstanding meteorologist and political broadcaster, Jim Dale. Great to see both of you.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning. I think we're going to have an interesting conversation about this, Reem, because you are pretty conservative, small c conservative when it comes to the economy, quite liberal on immigration. So where do you stand on the impact of migrant hotels in a town like Bournemouth?
I think really this is about the fact that the taxpayers are footing the bill for these migrant hotels. So you are right in saying that generally speaking, I want the government to stay out of our way. I don't want the government to tell businesses who they can and cannot hire, for example. But this is an entirely different situation. This is a situation in which the people of Bournemouth are effectively being forced to take on this group of people that aren't working, and taxpayers are footing the bill for it. That is absolutely outrageous, and I think that it's very clear when you speak to people, when you hear about the emotion that they are really facing at the moment. But also there have been so many stories over the weekend over a lot of these migrants who have been put into prison for various different issues, whether it be sort of petty crimes. They've then been released when they should have been deported, and instead what has happened is they've gone and committed even worse crimes. So there was a case last week of that migrant that murdered a schoolboy. I mean, you know, what is effectively happening is we are allowing these people to stay. I think it's interesting that the Home Secretary did say, if you are a foreign migrant and you've come to the UK and you've committed a crime, you'll be deported immediately. I hope that is the case. That is something that everybody across Britain has been crying out for literally years. So it will be interesting to see if it happens. But look, I mean, as I said, I'm pro-immigration when it comes to legal migration, people that are actually contributing. But when you come here illegally and taxpayers are being forced to foot the bill, effectively we're being taken for fools.
It's not just money, is it? Because, of course, that is a scandal. What are we looking at? £3 to £4 billion a year for the migrant hotels?
Yeah, it's insane.
Which would pay for free school meals for every child in the country and many other things it would pay for.
Indeed. Or tax cuts, right? Or the fact that, you know, we're paying the highest tax bills.
The last time I looked, in terms of what the government is planning, they're planning to close these hotels. So transition is where we are at this moment in time. It will take time, because I think, you know, let's just have common sense here. If people arrive in boats illegally, they can't be turned back to France. That's not going to happen, because it would be just a to and fro. You'd be at war with France. So they've got to go somewhere. And at the moment, where we are at this moment in time is we're picking up from 14 years of, and remember where they started. It started with the Conservative Party putting them into hotels. So 1 year and a bit later, Labour have had to pick that up. And now they're saying they're going to move away from that policy. It will take time, but I don't see anybody out there saying what the alternative is at this moment in time. It's an unfortunate thing, but we're not the only people, as you well know, in Europe. In fact, we're in terms of migrants generally, illegal migrants, we take a lot less than most European countries.
I don't want to be like Europe. I mean, I was just recently in Brussels, actually, and I remember thinking, so I'm half Moroccan, right? I remember calling up my mum saying, God, you know, Morocco must be really safe right now because all of the Moroccan criminals seem to have come to Belgium. I mean, literally, you come to places like Brussels, even when you look at France, and it feels like absolute mayhem. The streets are covered, homeless people absolutely everywhere, the majority of whom are clearly probably illegal migrants. I mean, I've got no evidence for that, by the way, but it's just absolutely insane what is currently happening.
Well, they don't
in
have
Europe.
work, they're not pursuing a career. It's likely that they are illegal immigrants.
So I think France is effectively what the UK will be like in 5 years' time if we don't do anything about it.
What we have to do is we have to go back to the starting point. Why is this happening at all? Why?
Because they get free stuff.
Are we ready for the climate change klaxon?
Well, there's a little bit of that. Of course there is. You go to places like Somalia, Sudan, these places are baking hot, no
I'm
water,
sorry, that's just not true.
It is true.
No, it's not true.
Climate migration is part of the equation.
It's not true that the people that are coming to this country are coming here illegally because of climate change.
So where else are we going? Afghanistan, Palestine. Where are we going in terms of where are these people coming from?
We currently have are actually coming from those countries.
From Afghanistan, we left a lot of people who helped us during the wars there.
And we've let those people come, but the people that are coming currently on the boats are not coming from those countries. They're coming from France. They are not fleeing war.
A safe country.
They're not French. Hang on, they're not French. We're talking about people from
France, a safe country, and coming to the United Kingdom for benefits, free hotels, free dentistry, free driving lessons. That's why they're coming.
Why are they coming to the UK?
Why are they coming to the UK is because
we're a soft touch. Because we're mugs.
We know.
We're being mugged off.
As I've already suggested to you, and it's true that they're mostly going to European countries, so they're spreading themselves around. They're looking for a better life. That's probably the way it is.
A lot of these people. So I have no problem with people wanting to have a better life. Absolutely no problem with that whatsoever.
That would be the majority.
I am very supportive of economic migration where those people are working and contributing. Unfortunately, a lot of these people have been allowed to stay in the United Kingdom and literally murder our school children. I am sorry, but I will not sit here and say that those people have come here because of climate change.
That's just a massive exaggeration.
It's not.
Murdering school children. Look, if you want to look at crime in the UK,
what about the sexual assault of the Bell Hotel in
it can happen,
Epping?
Of course, in any population.
And what about the casual harassment of local women?
Yeah, look, all of that is minuscule compared to.
Don't say that harassment of women is minuscule.
No, the harassment of women is mainly from middle-aged white people.
Here we go again. Don't go anywhere, folks. He's just had a Gary Neville moment. More on this in
it's absolutely true.
Don't go anywhere.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I've just said I'm pro-immigration, people are working.
There you go. Look, it's all kicked off. We're on the radio, we're on TV, and my brilliant guests are really at each other's throats this morning. We have the communications manager at the IEA, the Institute of Economic Affairs, Reem Ibrahim, and the highly respected meteorologist and political broadcaster, Jim Dale. And Jim, the issue we've got with illegal immigration is that people are not happy with it. And actually, if you take people out of the migrant hotels and put them in an army barracks, you're just shifting the problem to another part of a city. These people are still free to roam during the day. They have pocket money, they have mobile phones. The public have had enough.
Yeah, let's look at those two words, illegal immigration, because me and Reem, we can agree that immigration, and I think most people would agree, because it's happened throughout history, we are all in some shape or form immigrants. In other words, the Vikings, the Romans, etc., etc. So we've always had a multi-ethnicity population. That's always been the case.
We had sensible levels of immigration, didn't we?
The problem,
10, 15,000 a year throughout the 70s and 80s.
Yeah, but the problem is the illegal bit, which this government is trying its best, left with a legacy that was untenable, and that's what's being picked up at this moment in time.
Your solution is to move them to an army barracks. Well, that, by the way, is still going to cost billions because they have to be, made appropriate for habitation.
What's your solution? What is the solution?
Oh, my solution is a very simple one.
Go on.
I would detain anyone that enters the country illegally.
Where?
I'd build Nightingale-style accommodation, which would be secure. Because if you enter the country illegally, you've broken the law. You are a criminal.
Mark,
a criminal should be incarcerated.
It sounds exactly the same.
Anything you like. Barbed wire, yes. But what I would do is I would not give these folk liberty.
Remember, you've got within those. I recognise there's a lot of males, young males. I recognise that absolutely. But there's also, as we know, there are females, there are children. You're going to do the same with them.
Yeah, most definitely.
Well, where we go
it would be humane. It would be secure.
It's about incentives, right?
But what do you think about the idea that if you've entered the country illegally, you're detained? Because the problem I've got, Reem, is I think it's a red herring to say close the hotels, because yes, they're a disgrace. But what's the difference if it's a nearby ex-army barracks, which is also neighbouring a primary school or a shopping centre? It's the same problem shifted somewhere else.
Part of the problem is that we don't know who these people are, and I think basically we have to have an honest conversation about why they are coming in the first place. I am very, very pro economic migration. These people are coming to the UK majoritively, if they are coming from a safe country like France, because of the economic opportunities that we have in the United Kingdom. So let's be honest about this. Why are British people then upset about this? Well, a lot of them come in huge masses as a result of basically government subsidies, right? So effectively the government will say, I'm going to give you a free hotel room in this particular area, and so you have mass amounts of those people. They're not going to integrate. They very, very are unlikely to work. Integration occurs if people actually want to come here and work and contribute. Integration occurs from working with British people, but this isn't what happens at the moment, and that is why, quite rightly, lots of people are very, very upset.
They are, but it's kind of blown out of all proportion. Let's make something clear.
Jim,
let's
how dare you tell people
go back
4 years. You can't tell people how to feel.
Years, 5 years
tell Richard in Poole, who's in
tears
as a result of what's happened to Brighton.
Okay, so let's go back to Brexit. Okay, when it came in, the promise was...
This is woke bingo, isn't it? We've had climate change, now Brexit.
Well, look, racism, I mean, what's next?
The point about Brexit was it was supposed to secure the borders.
Most
Remember,
agree
Farage, etc. It failed.
That's not the fault of Brexit.
Jim, it didn't fail. What happened is when we left the European Union, we continued to keep and be a membership of the ECHR. We have huge regulations, and even from an economics perspective, we have tariffs and quotas
is there for very many reasons, as you know.
But Jim, the point is, leaving the European Union, Brexit was about taking back control of our own legislation, of our own sovereignty.
Indeed.
And this is about choice.
It never happened.
You're right about that.
Because the government made bad choices, yes.
No one would disagree with you.
So let's go back to Farage and let's go back to Johnson, because they were the architects of
No.
Brexit.
You've got to go back to Johnson, definitely. Hey, we don't have to disagree.
We're not defending Johnson's record
absolutely
at all.
everything you've said is right about how the Tories started this. They had the migrant hotels. They opened open the borders. They didn't stop the boats. 100%. That is not the fault of Brexit, right? It's not the fault of your front door if you don't lock it at night. Okay, and that's the point about Brexit, is it hasn't been executed and leveraged in the way that it will be probably when Reform win. But here's a question, right? What would you say to the women of Bournemouth, Poole, Eastbourne, who are being harassed by men who are in the country illegally, who are intimidating and who are making life a misery for them?
Yeah,
what do you say to those
exactly
women?
the same way that people are intimidated in various ways by drunkards, by others, etc. Yeah,
no.
Hang on a second. Yeah, because
I don't
that
think so. I
happens
think young
in
women
greater society per se.
You can't compare local revellers with illegal migrants who have a completely different attitude to women.
Yeah, it becomes a legal issue. It's got to be.
It's not the same as the lads down the pub.
No, it isn't. And look, the problem is, the real problem here is that, yes, Jim is right. If you are a woman, you are probably more likely to be harassed by a British person than you are by a migrant, because there are more British people than migrants. However, per capita, they are more likely to do so. You are more likely to be somebody that does that kind of thing, somebody that does that kind of horrendous crime, if you are a migrant, because per capita they do more of that, right? So that's why there is clearly an issue here. And I think the problem is these people aren't coming to work and to seek out those employment opportunities, and they actually aren't allowed to, right?
You don't fully know
Jim, let me
that.
finish. When you're on the asylum backlog, you're not allowed to work, and you're actually forced to be burdens on the taxpayer. And I think that's the fundamental point here. I am pro-immigration when people are able to come here. The government has gone in the way and basically created a magnet for people to come into this country illegally, and British people are being forced to pay for it.
Well, one of the things that actually, again, that failed with the last government was the system just got jammed, if you like. In other words, thousands and thousands of people, because they weren't processing, finding out where they were coming from, why they were here, where they were going to work.
They throw their documents out. They don't want to know.
That's now being speeded up as well. We know.
Well,
so
it doesn't fix the problem to let everyone
in. You can't just click your fingers and things are going to be better in a year.
Yes, you can. You can click your fingers.
You cannot.
Yeah.
You can't be a Rupert Lowe.
You can click your
saying,
fingers.
just send them back.
I don't agree with it, but
simpleton.
No, it's not pathetic simpleton. That's horrendously rude. I don't agree with the approach, but Trump did click his fingers and basically
overnight ended illegal immigration.
Problems in America.
Agree. Look,
massive divisions.
Jim, I've just said I'm not supportive of that approach.
He's closed the border.
Look, I'm not supportive of that approach. However, it is possible, and so to say it isn't possible is untrue.
You could have an act of parliament to leave the ECHR within a week.
Yeah, I think that creates...
You could call the commander of the Royal Navy and say, turn the boats around. You can build emergency Nightingale prisons for anyone that crosses the border from, I would say, a week today. Okay, we did that during COVID for those pathetic Nightingale hospitals that were never used.
Well, as I say, it's almost like simple answers, but these simple answers...
Click a finger. It's easy.
They do not, because if it was that easy... If it was that easy, this government would do it.
I'll tell you why, Reem, because the political will is not there. That's why it's not easy.
It is ultimately about the politics, isn't it? Look, the ECHR is part of that. Every time we have tried to deport somebody, they've appealed it to the Supreme Court, and then it's meant that it's basically... Not to the Supreme Court, sorry, to the ECHR, and it has basically meant that we've not been able to do any of that. But again, look, we've just got to stop. My view is, stop making British people pay for migration. That's it. If you stop the magnet, the pull factor, then fundamentally the people that come to this country will be contributing, will be working, will be supporting the economy as a whole.
No, I think actually if they came to this country, the crime would get even greater, because they would have zero support, zero money, and their reason then to go on the streets and burgle or do what they want to do would be higher, not lower.
I would rather than those people leave fundamentally.
Okay, well listen, should the Prime Minister Keir Starmer bring back the Rwanda plan to stop the boats, and also, if you put a flag in your garden, is that because you want Britain to be an only white country? That is what the ex-cocaine snorting star of Blue Peter, Richard Bacon, has said. We'll discuss that next.
I think Robert Jenrick's comments were more than just unfortunate. I think they were
racist.
I think they were disgraceful, and I'll choose my own words. I think they were appalling and disgraceful. And as Andy Street, former mayor of the West Midlands, said on TV this week, were factually wrong. And I trust the.
Well, they're not factually wrong.
I trust the former mayor of the West Midlands more than I do Robert Jenrick.
If Robert Jenrick factually did not see another white face for 90 minutes and he says, I didn't see another white face, that is a fact.
Well, he says that.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Folks, so much to get through. It has kicked off. It is a little bit like a boxing match this morning in the head-to-head with my two brilliant guests, Reem Ibrahim and Jim Dale. Mark says, Lisa and Durham, which gated community does Mr. Weatherman live in? He obviously has no connection with the real world. And an interesting one from, let's have a look, an unnamed texter. Don't be afraid of sending people back to Afghanistan. As we've seen recently, it's a holiday destination for some people. Andy in Bridgend says, good morning, Mark. You don't need coffee to wake up in the morning. You just need to listen to Reem and Jim to get your fully alert mental state and ready to take on the day. Great show. Andy, thank you for that. Regarding illegal immigration, Tim is a UK veteran and has said the answer to hotels, detention centres on remote military bases, just like I had to live on. I don't care what others say. I don't care what others say. Jim Dale says a better life. He needs to wake up. I served to protect him. George in Corby. Hi, Mark. As an immigrant who came to this lovely country from Cyprus in 1960, I can only describe the likes of Gary Neville as traitors. Well, there's been a massive reaction to today's Dolan's dispatch. And it was all about the fact that Lenny Henry wants Britain to spend £17 trillion on slavery reparations. Gary Neville thinks it's racist to fly the flag. And now, ex-Blue Peter star, BBC star Richard Bacon, said this on Newsnight this week.
There are times when it's fine and it's celebratory. When Jerry Halliwell was wearing Union Jack pants in the late 90s, that was all fun and playful. Right now, it's a very sensitive subject. I think right now, if you stick a pole and a Union Jack tomorrow outside your house, I think you're making a statement. And I think that statement is probably that you prefer Britain to be more white.
The context is being curated and invented by the identity politicians. That's the problem.
But that's quite a thing to say. If you put a flag in your garden, you're saying you want Britain to be more white.
I think you're making a statement right now. I think right now it's a sensitive subject, and I think to do it now, to get the pole and put the flag outside your house right now, I think you are making a statement.
Fascinating excerpt there from BBC's Newsnight in the company and alongside Talk's very own, the brilliant Alex Phillips. Reem Ibrahim, do you think that people who put a flag in their garden want Britain to be a white country?
Some of them may, but I don't think it means that they do. Obviously not. I mean, that's ridiculous. What's so interesting about this is a lot of the people on the left will say, you know, the English flag is, you know, so associated with the EDL. And then as soon as people start to take that back and say, no, the English flag is our English flag. It has nothing to do with racism or the far right. I just want to be proud to be English. Then they're still complaining.
Yeah, Jim? Which is exactly what the Labour Party conference did when they brought out all their little flags. Exactly what you said. It's that. Look, what we're seeing is an element of the people who put flags in their gardens or paint roundabouts or hang up lampposts, etc., blah, blah, blah. There is an element of truth in what Richard is actually saying.
God, no.
There's an element of truth.
It's
without
a lie.
No, listen. There will be... Look, throughout history, we've had nationalistic people who want basically this all-white
You
nation.
think it's racist to be proud to be English?
No. Let make it clear. I'm trying to be diplomatic as possible about this. I'm saying there's an element. Okay, there's an element. We should be proud of the flag when it is something to be proud of. For example, winning the World Cup. For example, the Olympics. For example, if we send somebody to the moon, that's when you wave your flags. Sticking.
I'm absolutely outraged by this.
What is painting a roundabout
It's showing that we're proud to be English. My God, every other country does. Every other country seems perfectly capable of using their own national flag and not having absolutely stupid conversations about racism. No, I disagree. What's hilarious about this is What's hilarious about this is I'm a third-generation migrant, right? My grandparents came from North Africa, and I am very, very proud to say England is a fantastic country, and you should fly your flag if you want to. That is your prerogative.
And I'm a plastic paddy myself. But my question to you is regarding this suggestion that people have the flag, they want Britain to be a white country. That must be what? 0.1% of the population?
Yeah, look, there may very be, but the point is...
Where are all these white supremacists, Jim? Do
Well,
they live on your street?
They're at the front
Which
of that.
pubs do they drink in? Because I've never met them.
Well, look, you do see them, and you know the Trafalgar.
Where do you see them?
Trafalgar.
How can you tell what they look like? They've got white skin. That's enough, isn't it?
A lot of them.
If you're white, you're racist.
Look, a lot of them battle the police, as we know. They are that way inclined. They go back to the National Front.
More than the genocide protesters at the hate marches.
I'm not going to defend him, but even Tommy Robinson says, he loves the Sikh community. He talks to them regularly. He likes the Hindu community. Even Tommy Robinson is not an ethnic nationalist.
So what are these flag wavers? Listen to me. What are these flag wavers who turned up a few weeks ago? And I'm talking now the front rank of them, battling with the police, throwing stuff at horses. What are they?
There's a black lady at the front.
Are you talking about Unite the Kingdom?
Yeah, I am.
There was a black lady at the front of the Unite the Kingdom march.
Yeah, it was a diverse makeup. But the other thing about those protests, right, that this was, I think, just under 20 arrests, half of which came from far-left agitators causing trouble. It was the most peaceful march in the history of this country.
I don't think you...
About 500,000 people were on that march.
I don't think you saw the TV pictures in terms of what was going on.
That's because you've been watching Sky News and the BBC.
I'll watch a ranger programme because that's what you need to do to get a full picture.
By the evidence, there were way less arrests at those marches than there have been in any other march.
Including the Notting Hill Carnival.
Besides, oh God, I mean, would you ban Notting Hill Carnival?
No, I wouldn't, to be honest.
There was almost no trouble at that march. Possibly 500,000 people there. 20 arrests. I'll take that. I think you get more arrests at the Tottenham game.
Go back and look at the video, and you'll see those people, and that's the people I'm meaning. That's the minority, and they are the minority.
But this is
that
the point.
Are essentially racist.
So therefore, it is not racist to fly the England flag. There may be racists that fly the England flag. However, it is not fundamentally racist to fly the England flag. Would you agree?
I would say that there is an element of people who fly that flag who are racist.
Fine, there may be, but is it racist to fly the England flag? But is it racist to fly the England flag?
No, it's not racist. Of course it's not. But there is an element that will be, and do it for that reason.
Therefore, he was wrong, right?
No, Gary Neville was absolutely right.
You've just said it is not racist to fly the England flag.
I'll quote for you, okay? Angry white middle-aged men. What he meant by that, by the way, and I looked at that video several times, he's not actually meaning the people who are out there demonstrating or flying the flag. He's actually looking at the likes of Farage, Jenrick and others. Those are the angry white middle-aged men he's talking about.
He's talking about the builders who work for him.
So you're saying the Farage is racist?
Yes, he did, because he said on one of his building sites he took a flag down.
That doesn't matter.
He's talking about the people he employs.
He's got as much prerogative to take that down as people to put it up. So leave that aside. What he's actually aiming at, and I looked at that video very, very carefully. Go back and look and you'll see. He's aiming at those at the top, the leaders of these parties.
No, he's not.
Yes, he is.
But hold on, but
yes,
he said, I walked around, I've seen all these flags, and I blame middle-aged white men who know what they're doing.
You're not quoting him incorrectly. You need to go back and look at that video. I've looked at it several times. I was on BBC Radio 4 on an hour's programme on this one, and I wanted to get it right and see where he was coming from. And the reason he didn't go on and say, oh, it's these people, or name Farage or whatever, obviously he's protecting his own job. But you look at it and you can very, very easily see that his aim is at those stirring the pot at the top.
Who is stirring the pot?
Jenrick, Farage, Tice.
How are they stirring the pot?
Because they are basically being divisive in terms of their language.
Divisive?
By their language, by what they do and how they do it.
How the majority of British people feel. Is that divisive?
No. All right, if we're going to talk about the majority of people, according to the Gigapol, of 43,000 people, 69% of people are happy with their racial arrangement. In other words, where they live and who they live with and who they're mixing with. That's 69%. 69%. Okay?
As we've heard from the wonderful callers of this show, Mark, there are lots and lots of people that are very upset with the current situation, and I don't believe it is racist to be upset with how this country
I don't believe that either. I'm not saying that.
Okay, well look, let me tell you, the show's all about opinions, and it's been great to have both of your opinions. You've absolutely owned it this morning. Reem Ibrahim, Communications Manager at the IEA, and the excellent Jim Dale, author of Whether or Not. Let's get a plug in, because he's got bills to pay. And a very, very entertaining political commentator. Folks, much more to come. Next up, would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? I'll be asking one of the country's most revered journalists, plus your calls, next.
We've been talking this morning about a new theme park which is going to be built. The Universal Studios apparently are going to build it in Bedfordshire. We've been asking many of you to give us some ideas for theme parks. Alison in South Wales says in the new theme park at 5 p.m. every day they could have the PIP parade. All the people driving their brand new Motability cars.
Instead of the water rapids, you can have a road you go down that's full of potholes in a car with bad suspension and flat tyres. I don't know why they're bothering building a theme park in this country. They're going right, no one will be able to afford to go to it anyway.
How about the Rachel Reeves ride, says Terry in Birmingham. You go round and round and vanish up your own deficit. It's the HS2 ride. It travels at high speed for 10 feet, where everyone gets off and into the replacement bus ride. Tickets are £50 if bought 5 months in advance, or £1,000 on the day.
There's a strong rumour going around that Rachel Reeves is going to have a kissing booth for this theme park. So what I'll do, mate, I'll shove a £5 in a pot and you can go and fill your boots.
Thank you very much indeed. Very generous of you. One from G, who says fast-track entry to every ride for illegals, plus a free night stay in the Parks Hotel and free food. New theme park bumper cars will have to pay a congestion charge, and the funhouse isn't built yet, despite Angela Rayner's pledge to build houses. What about Ghost Train doesn't move because the driver's on strike? Have a good day. This is brilliant for the theme park. How about grow your own cannabis farm? Yeah, that's a good one. An Ethiopian safari park narrated by Angela Rayner, says Gary in Durham. How about that? This sums up the Labour Party to me. The one idea they have to improve growth for the economy is to basically have a bloody big fun fair. It's the type of idea primary school children would pitch, given 10 minutes to come up with something. Well, it turns out, Matt, in Royston, that it's not even their idea. But they're now trying to claim it's their idea, even though it was actually the Tories.
They have done brilliantly on breakfast, but you know on Drive you've done brilliantly as well. Downhill slide rides surrounded by ULEZ cameras so that people are fined on exit. Love it. You could have a Birmingham-themed whack the rat stall. If you whack the rat, you can have your bin emptied for free. On the Labour theme park, a house of mirrors where they're all boarded up because they can't bear to look themselves in the eye.
I've got a great one for you, mate.
This is for the is this for the Universal theme park run by Labour?
Moat right around the park.
Yeah.
With loads of dinghies. Call it the channel and say anyone who can break in, all is free.
Imagine a Scouser say you can break into a theme park for free.
Hi, Jeremy. Hey, it's simple. You've got the Labour ghost train.
Yeah.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
I'm Mark Dolan, and this is Talk Breakfast. A very big hour to come. Welcome to the madhouse. The Reform UK councillor who said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland, is now to face a police investigation. It's an alleged hate crime to use that expression? Well, a legal expert has been advising her, and he joins us on the show shortly. And this morning, in a Talk Breakfast exclusive, we've revealed the full devastating effect of illegal immigration in Bournemouth, which is an example of many towns in the country blighted by migrant hotels. Let me know whether your town or city has been impacted by these venues. 0344 499 1000. And a very big reaction to today's Dolan's Dispatch. It's always at 8 a.m. The monologue is back, but you've got to set your alarm, folks. 8 a.m. is when we do Dolan's Dispatch, in which I drop a few truth bombs, and boy, it was a big one today. I've been calling out Sir Lenny Henry, who wants Britain to pay 17 or 18 trillion pounds in slavery reparations. Gary Neville, who thinks it's racist to fly a flag, and now former cocaine-snorting ex-BBC star Richard Bacon has caused uproar by claiming that folk who put a flag in their garden want Britain to be a white country only. That's a lie. I've been calling him out, but give me your reaction. 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222, and somehow you and I will decode the madness. We're on the radio via DAB+, we're online, we're in-app, and you can watch the show. Just search Talk on YouTube and up we pop. Lots to get through, a busy hour. Christopher Biggins, he's been on the fat jabs. He reveals the results before the end of the show. Plus, the Labour local authority looking to see a head teacher sacked for her support of a Reform UK believing and voting member of staff. Crazy cancel culture in overdrive. All of that to come. As the saying goes, let's talk. Well, it's quite the anniversary tomorrow, because if she were still alive, Margaret Thatcher would turn 100. What would she make of modern Britain? What would she make of the modern Conservative Party? What would she make of Keir Starmer? Imagine Thatcher facing him in the House of Commons across the dispatch box. And would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? Let's get the views of one of the most respected journalists in the country, the former political editor of the Sun newspaper, Trevor Kavanagh. Good morning, Trevor.
Good morning, Mark.
Trevor, a wonderful piece by you in yesterday's Sun newspaper about an extraordinary bomb attack that you were both involved in. Tell me more.
Well, there were several bomb attacks against Margaret Thatcher, but this one was actually a near-miss air crash. So we were travelling around the world, as we did with Margaret Thatcher, in the privileged position of members of Her Majesty's lobby, parliamentary lobby. And we were returning from China after talks about Hong Kong. And we landed in, or tried to land, at Andrews Air Base just outside Washington for her to meet President Ronald Reagan for a Christmas summit in Camp David. And we made a descent in thick fog and then aborted. And then we made another descent in thick fog and aborted. And the third attempt, we aborted at the very last moment. And suddenly the tail dropped, the engines roared, and we ascended but collected the top of a Christmas tree, a fir tree in the middle of a pine forest. With a tremendous crash, which could be heard by the reception team, which included the Secretary of State, Charles Schultz, and it was a very close miss. We were within inches, I suspect, of a really serious, in fact, fatal plane crash.
You nearly went down with the Iron Lady. What year was this, Trevor?
That was 1984, and it was about 6 weeks after the Brighton bombing, which of course was the bomb that very nearly did claim her life. So within the space of a couple of months, she came within an ace of being killed one way or another.
What did this near-miss air crash and indeed the Brighton bombing tell you about the character of Margaret Thatcher in terms of her response?
Well, that's an interesting question, Mark, because in both cases, she rose above it instantly while everybody else was in a flutter around her. She carried on business as usual, quite deliberately in Brighton. And then after the near miss, we were diverted from Andrews Air Base to Dulles Airport. And as she got off the plane, she passed the captain of the aircraft, who would have been an RAF pilot, a piece of paper saying, if you have any problems after that, just phone this number. And I think that he carried on his career, and she thought that he actually saved her life. I think there may be some questions about that, but the fact is that we survived, and she was indomitable.
When was the last time, Trevor, we had someone of Mrs. Thatcher's qualities in number 10?
I think that she was the last of several greats, and one of them, of course, was Winston Churchill. I don't think anyone of her caliber or fortitude or determination, and also patriotism. If you were discussing patriotism just now, I think that she would have been appalled by the events of the last 6 months, 2 years, and even further back. So I think it was all of that combination of the steel of the Iron Lady was abundantly clear throughout her period in office.
She warned in her lifetime and during her career that extreme environmentalism was really just a proxy for socialism. She was concerned about the environment and pollution and even climate change, wasn't she? But she would have had no truck with Britain's zeal for net zero.
No, in fact, she was one of the very first world leaders to actually identify the development of climate change and wrote a piece about it for her political advisors and spoke about it in public. So, yes, she would have been very much aware of the sciences because she was a scientist as well as a politician. But I think the thing about politicians in those days, and it wasn't just Margaret Thatcher, was that they weren't quite swayed as much by popular hysteria as they are today.
Most definitely not. So where would Margaret Thatcher position herself politically in 2025? Do you think she would be curious about what Nigel Farage has to say and has to offer?
Yes, I think she would. I mean, the thing is, there's been a debate about whether she would have been a Brexiteer herself. Her closest ally in Downing Street, Charles Powell, now Lord Powell, has argued that he does not believe she would have supported Brexit. And I have great respect for Charles Powell, but I think she might actually, in view of what was transpiring during and after she left office. And I think that she would have been very worried and even possibly alarmed at the direction of travel towards what she regarded as a form of socialism, which is what the European Union stood for.
Yes, indeed, and I think she would have prioritised sovereignty over even free trade.
Yes, sovereignty comes first. I think it isn't free trade otherwise, because you're basically jumping to other people's instructions.
Yeah.
You have to have your voice, and the voice of the nation was gradually being smothered by the people who thought they ran Europe. And her passionate speech in the House of Commons, in which she denounced Jacques Delors' plans for basically a European superstate on things such as the currency, the constitution, and so on, and her ringing words, no, 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 would, I thought, have rung down the years subsequently if she had stayed in office. But they actually brought her down as Prime Minister.
Trevor, you served as the political editor of the Sun newspaper for 2 decades with distinction. Can you tell me what life was like reporting on the premiership of Margaret Thatcher for the best part of a decade?
Well, I have to say that it was an enormous privilege to be able, as a lobby journalist and a representative of the Sun, and for nearly a quarter of a century, to follow prime ministers on their visits around the world, to see world leaders, to visit the Kremlin, the White House, the Great Hall of the People in China, and especially when it was a period when Margaret Thatcher was Prime Minister. She was a formidable or even a ferocious politician and did not brook disagreement very readily, although she liked a verbal punch-up. But, I mean, she literally transformed Britain from the sick man of Europe into one of the most prosperous and respected nations in the world, alongside American President Ronald Reagan. And Britain benefited enormously from her legacy and from her performance as Prime Minister. And although she had vehement, if not vitriolic, enemies who would have been very happy for her to have gone down in that fireball in the forest around Washington, I think that she did amazing things for the British economy and its status in the world.
What might Mrs. Thatcher have made of illegal immigration? Would she have stopped the boats?
It's almost impossible to imagine, had she continued in this role as Prime Minister for the following 2 or 3 dozen years, that these things would have happened. We wouldn't be in a position where we were watching daily flotillas of boats laden with up to 100 strangers arriving in this country and establishing squatters' rights. I think that that's an abominable situation in itself, and it would not have been acceptable to her, and it shouldn't be acceptable to any of the prime ministers of this country.
Are there any aspects of her time in Number 10 that diminish her legacy? Taking a revisionist look back at her time in office, where did she go wrong, would you say?
I think that those who still admire her would agree that she went on a little too long. She was at her peak for the first 6 to 8 years of her 11 years in office. There's no doubt about that. And even her critics pay tribute to her, the way she transformed Britain. But I think that she got to the point where she was a bit messianic and decided that only she could do the task, perform the task of Prime Minister. And I think, as I say, even those who admired her most in the earlier years began to have their reservations. So, I mean, that's the situation, the actual position that took place at that time. And that is why, in the end, they turned on her and knifed her in 1990. But that was, I think she was always ready for a fight, even with her friends, and lost the sort of perspective of where she needed the allies who were prepared to die in the ditch for her. So that, I think, is the problem. That I think sometimes power goes too far. People can't relinquish it. They won't give it up once they've got it. And I think that had she gone a couple of years earlier, she would have had an even bigger legacy.
Indeed, and I think obviously the poll tax, which she insisted on calling the community charge, was an unfortunate political hill to die on, and that certainly didn't help her in any way. But can I ask you also, does she have a case to answer for her treatment of mining communities following the miners' strike? She's not a popular figure in many parts of the North and the Midlands still to this day.
I think even she regretted the fact that they didn't do more as a government to help those communities through what were very, very painful times, not just in the opportunities for employment, but for whole families whose lives revolved around mining and the collieries. So I don't think she was subsequently blind to it, but I think that the battle with the likes of Arthur Scargill, the mine workers' leader, was so much for the survival of her government, which was the objective of his strike campaign. He wanted to bring down the British government. And so she got locked into these adversaries, and I think the human casualties of that, what was real conflict, I think were ignored too much.
And finally, Trevor, does the current leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, is she an heir apparent to the legacy of Margaret Thatcher? What did you make of her speech this week to conference?
Well, I think that was a remarkable speech insofar as it contained one really important policy announcement, which was the abolition of stamp duty, which I think is a pernicious tax and has actually damaged the economy since its expansion in the George Osborne budget. And I think that she's done a great deal in that speech to begin to be taken seriously as leader. But as she has said herself, Margaret Thatcher took several years before she became the figure that she subsequently was seen as. I think that is perhaps a little optimistic that things will turn out all right. There was a lot done during the Thatcher years, the early years, which made in some cases, people's eyes water. And we aren't seeing that from Kemi yet. But she needs more of these policies. She needs to come out with some significant speeches on issues like education, social policy, welfare reform, savings in public spending and borrowing. And they have to be spelled out in ways which resonate, as I think the stamp duty announcement did.
My thanks to one of the biggest and most respected names in British political journalism, Trevor Kavanagh. Trevor, thank you so much. We'll catch up soon. Fascinating conversation. Your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Would Margaret Thatcher have stopped the boats? Would she now be a Reform UK supporter? Let me know your thoughts on that. Neil says, hi Mark, Thatcher wouldn't have needed to stop the boats as they wouldn't have dared to attempt to come across in the first place a strong leader who protected her country. Next up, welcome to the madhouse. The Reform UK councillor who said that she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland is now to face a police investigation. Well, a top legal expert has been advising her, and he joins me next.
So a lot of these people who come from Syria or the Middle East, various areas, or Africa, they say, oh, we're from Sudan, because they know that the British Home Office allows in 99% of Sudanese asylum seekers. We allow pretty much more than 90% of Afghani asylum seekers. So there's this sort of league table that we've got of people from various countries who get almost automatic leave to live here. It's out of control.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Well, folks, listen, welcome to the madhouse. This is an extraordinary story, and it's a Reform UK councillor who said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland, and she's now going to face a police investigation. So she was reported to police after she made a comment saying that she was born and bred in the area. During an interview, it's Claire Mackey-Brown, who joined the party in March of this year. She was being interviewed regarding the anti-migrant protests that have been taking place outside a hotel in the area. During the interview with STV, she said there is a true unrest, and it's scary as a local resident, somebody who was born and bred in the area. Well, immediately after making the comment, she looked away from the reporter and said, I shouldn't have said that. Let's take a listen to what is a clip that's now gone viral.
People don't want answers about the local white boy who's done this that you are unaware of.
Because it's not known. If I don't know about it, how am I supposed to have an opinion on it or be able to ask questions? I don't have an answer to that. I'm trying my hardest to bring community cohesion. I've been overwhelmed with the contacts I've had from people within Falkirk. And, you know, there is a true unrest, and it's scary. It's scary as a local resident, somebody who's born and bred here. I shouldn't have said that.
Well, do you see why this is? People sometimes think that reform are very much against having people
It just came out.
That's unfortunate for you, I guess, but ultimately, do you see why people who aren't from here, who have maybe made their home here, are annoyed when they hear an elected official say that people are born and bred here?
Well, that's an extraordinary moment. Fraser Hudgton is a legal expert and director of the Free Speech Union in Scotland, and he's been advising her. He joins me now. Good morning, Fraser.
Morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm very well indeed. Good to have you on the programme. Can you explain why saying that you're born and bred in an area is so controversial?
Well, I think the public at large will recognise and have empathy with Claire's hesitancy when she said that and then stopped herself, because I think that's what people do now. I think people are conscious that there are certain things that perhaps you shouldn't say or cannot say. Of course, you know, another advisor at the time might have said to her just to plough on ahead, and I think her hesitancy led to that interviewer then intervening in not really the best way, and I don't think that kind of cast a very positive light on the whole situation. I don't think there was a problem with what she said, and I don't think the public at large will think there is a problem with what she said either. But there are clearly some who do. I mean, I have read a 22-page dossier that was submitted to everyone in their ante. Police Scotland, the government is in there, the Ethical Standards Commissioner, in an attempt to kind of cut Claire Mackey-Brown, the councillor, down as she goes along. It's remarkable. It's a remarkable story.
Our efforts to bring about a police investigation, are they politically motivated, do you think?
I would say so, yeah. I mean, the dossier itself, to me, looks like a hatchet job. It looks like it's been written by activists. It's not the kind of document that appears to me to be written by, for example, a constituent of Councillor Mackey-Brown. It looks to me, and it's 22 pages. I mean, the fact that it is so long and what's contained within it suggests that they don't like her political views. You know, when I grew up, I believed that the police were there to catch the bad guys, and I think most people would say that. But there's definitely a view held now by many in society that they're there to catch the people that you don't like.
Well, indeed, and anyone living in Falkirk that's been the victim of antisocial behaviour or a burglary or a car theft won't be very happy that the police are spending even a nanosecond looking at this. As you said, it's an extraordinary case. You've been actually advising this person in regard to what's happened, Claire Mackey-Brown. First of all, you know, what's her sort of mental state at the moment?
Well, I think I spoke to her both yesterday morning and this morning in advance of speaking to you. And yesterday she has been inundated with messages of support after the clip went viral and after this story of potential police involvement went viral. So initially I think she was quite shocked. And for any kind of lay person, anyone really, the suggestion that the police will somehow be involved in your life, especially where it's part of a vexatious campaign against you, is quite a shocking thing for anyone who's not had involvement with the law. So that was definitely our initial reaction. I spoke to the Free Speech Union in Scotland, as with the rest of the UK. We have a relationship with lots of criminal defence lawyers, and we have lined her up with one, should she need it. The police, of course, have to investigate complaints as they come in. That is their job. They can't just ignore things in case they miss something very important. But, you know, we shall wait to see how it goes. Will they pursue it all the way? We don't know at this stage, and at the moment it's a case of sitting and waiting to see what Police Scotland opt to do in these circumstances.
I'm not sure, Fraser, that this would have been controversial south of the border in England. Yes, you know, we have lots of activists in this country too, and protesters and all the rest of it, the so-called woke mob. But I just wonder whether this is a uniquely Scottish story and whether it tells us something about the political mood in Scotland at the moment. Is that a fair comment?
I think that's a fair comment. I think the political movements that we've seen in the USA and the rest of the UK are now catching up in Scotland. And we can see that on the ground. You know, we saw in the course of the last few months protests outside asylum hotels, for example. So the kind of subject material or events taking place which didn't happen even last year are now happening in Scotland. So that is encroaching in there. But of course, we also have a government in the form of the Scottish National Party that's been in place for the best part of 20 years now up here, with no sign of shifting. And that's had its effect on the laws in the country, the Hate Crime Act being a notable example, and other things, and the general mood. So I think there is a feeling that other parties or other political movements starting to make headway is quite a surprising thing, which is perhaps not quite as notable in England or other parts of the world.
Well, that's right. I love Scotland so much, and I studied at the University of Edinburgh for 4 years. It's an incredible country, incredible people, and Edinburgh an amazing capital city. But Scotland is not the best place to be at the moment. For example, if you are a gender-critical feminist, someone that asserts the reality of biological sex, for example.
No, absolutely. That's probably the single hottest subject material in politics just now. It has been for a few years now, and it continues to be the case that mostly women, when they speak out on the subject and articulate their biological sex realist views, are attempted to be shut down. Their activists do this now. This is what they do. They want to shut down voices that they do not agree with and they do not like. And on that particular subject, it's hot, hot, hot. And I think it will have an effect on the May election. There's a Scottish parliamentary election in May next year. That subject will undoubtedly be there. But I think we're also seeing now, as is exampled by the response to Claire Mackey-Brown's comments in that STV interview, that immigration is also going to come into that.
Most definitely. Is free speech a particular issue in Scotland under the leadership of the SNP, do you think?
I think so. I absolutely think so. The First Minister last week did comment in the chamber at First Minister's questions on this. He was asked a question about the Hate Crime Act, and in his response he noted that there are free speech protections in that bill, which is an act which was actually written into the statute book in 2021. It passed Royal Assent at that point. It took 3 years before they could implement it because it was so subjective, so vague, and it came into force last year. And of course, the proponents of it say, well, you know, the free speech is protected in there. It's protected. But on the ground, it has created an environment with the heavy promotion of it where people feel emboldened, I think, to shut down views they do not like. They want to use criminal law and the police in the country to stop people from saying views, beliefs, opinions that they simply do not like. And for anyone who's ever been through a police investigation, that's quite a shocking thing. And many would argue, I think I would too, that it's a misuse really of police resources. It takes away from genuine victims of crime as well, I think.
Definitely. Fraser, before I let you go, we can both, alongside my viewers and listeners, condemn racism, which is the most wicked, awful thing, and it exists in our society. There are debates to be had around what lots of public figures say on TV and on the radio, but I'm really, really at a loss as to how saying that you're born and bred in an area is even 1% controversial. In fact, back in the day, before the world went mad, it was a tremendous selling point for a local politician.
Indeed, and politicians even today, including many SNP politicians, have that on their election paraphernalia. In response to that story yesterday, there were hordes of tweets about that very subject, identifying SNP candidates and Labour candidates and other individuals who said they were born and bred in the local area. And I don't think it's something to be ashamed of for anyone.
Fraser, where are you born and bred?
Forfar, up in the northeast of Scotland. Fantastic football team there, Forfar Athletic.
There you go. Yeah, that's right. It's, that name is the nemesis of football announcers around the country,
Indeed,
isn't it? Don't have a drink when you say that. Well, listen, they did a good job. They raw a fine one. Fraser, look forward to catching up again. Thanks for your time today. The director of the Free Speech Union in Scotland, Fraser Hodgson, who is from Forfar. Listen, folks, your reaction, 0344 499 1000. Is born and bred racist? Let me know your thoughts on that. Next up, do the fat jabs work? Well, I'll be asking TV national treasure Christopher Biggins next.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
So, a woman that said she was born and bred in Falkirk in Scotland is to face a police investigation. Welcome to the madhouse. Clive in Worcester. Mark, she was born there, fact. She was bred there, fact. What's wrong with saying that? Morning, Mark, says Margaret in Edinburgh. Old Reekie, lovely to have you listening or watching from there, Margaret. She says, morning, Mark, about the Reform councillor in Falkirk. What a ridiculous situation that you can't say born and bred. Speaking the truth in Scotland is now a crime. Well, nobody will stop me from saying that, Margaret. I certainly won't be doing that. And on Margaret Thatcher, what would she have thought of Nigel Farage? Well, Graham in Orsworth says, would Thatcher have been a supporter of reform? No. If Thatcher was still PM, the Conservative Party would still be Conservative, and therefore no need for a new political party to do what the Conservatives are supposed to be doing. She would have been 100 years old tomorrow. Let's get reaction to that and among other big stories from the legendary TV presenter, broadcaster and comedian and actor, the wonderful Christopher Biggins. Morning, Biggins.
Good morning, Mark. How are you?
I'm so well, and I want to get to your amazing health transformation in just a moment. You're looking very svelte. There's less of Biggins than ever. But can we just have a quick word from you on Mrs. Thatcher? She would have been 100 tomorrow. And of course, you know, you've been on telly for decades now. In the 80s, in her pomp, you were one of the best known celebrities and public figures. Did you ever cross paths with Mrs. T?
I certainly did. I met her several times, but I think the funniest one was I went to Charles Forte's memorial service in Westminster Abbey, and we sat in our seats, and she strode down the aisle just before the service was about to happen, and she sat there, and then afterwards there was a reception, and she had a young man on her arm. And they walked around this reception, and they walked towards us, and he turned to her and said, Christopher Biggins, actor. And she went, Christopher, how are you? And I thought, this is what I need in my life, is a young man on my arm to remind me who people are as I approach them. And she was wonderful. And I also met her at 10 Downing Street, and we had a conversation. And in my book, there's 3 pictures of us. And the first picture, we're doing this. The second picture, we're doing this, and the third picture, we're doing this. And the pictures, we're talking about art, because the whole of 10 Downing Street is filled with wonderful art. And so that was the conversation there. She was unbelievable. I loved her to death. When she was evicted by her fellow politicians from politics, I was in my car, and I stopped the car and just burst into tears. I was devastated. She ruled this country brilliantly. She had her moments, and those were good, and they were also bad.
Well, this is exactly right. Like all politicians, she's got a legacy where some great things happened, which I think is, you know, most of what she did has been transformative for the country. And of course, a couple of own goals along the way. That's to be expected after 11 years in power. You start to look back at the 80s, don't you, Biggins, as a golden era when politicians like Mrs. Thatcher actually said what they thought and followed through on their promises.
Absolutely. And, you know, she was instrumental in so many good things. And she led us. She was a personality. She had guts. She knew what she wanted, and she said it. And if you liked it, you went along with her. I mean, she was a brilliant politician. I mean, obviously, towards the end, things changed a bit. But, you know, that, as you say, after 11 years, it's a difficult one. But she was wonderful, and she will always be remembered as being a fantastic politician.
Well, the book that you mentioned is called Just Biggins. It's your best-selling autobiography, which I can highly recommend, an entertaining read. And just also on the confluence, the convergence of the world of politics and showbiz, Mrs. Thatcher had a foot in both camps, didn't she? Because, yes, she was the Prime Minister, she was a political leader, but she was a figure of popular culture as well. She was box office.
She certainly was. I mean, you know, you'd go along to a meeting and everybody was there. You know, they were all there supporting her. I mean, she was a light in that period of time, which everyone caught hold of and wanted to go with, because she was so fantastic.
And your mate, the late great Cilla Black, was, I think, a keen supporter of hers as well.
She certainly was. I mean, you know, I think a lot of people were. There were a lot of people, left-wing people, of course, who didn't like her, and we, the right wing, got a lot of stick from them. You know, and we were classified as the wrong sort of people to be supporting in politics. But that didn't matter, because we had our own views and we were very happy with them.
Well, definitely. And I think Cilla Black and Margaret Thatcher were cut from the same cloth. They made extraordinary lives from not particularly profligate origins. They were both a force to be reckoned with, and both cultural icons in their own way. Biggins, you are also a cultural icon, but you're fast disappearing. What's going on?
Well, I suffer from type 2 diabetes, and so my doctor, Raj, suggested I go on Mounjaro, which is this injection which you have once a week. And I've lost about 2 stone, and I brought down my diabetes rating to a low, very low, and it's getting lower. Now, I think that's great. Now, I know people who've taken it and they've lost a lot of weight, and I think they've lost too much weight. And I think that is the problem. I think you need to know where to stop, or if you're suddenly looking gaunt and ill, then I don't think it's a good thing to keep taking. I think there's a happy medium with it. It's certainly a wonderful drug, and I think there are other added benefits to it too. I think that you know, it helps with the heart, it helps with all sorts of things, and it's certainly I've loved doing it, and I've loved being a part of the campaign to lose weight, and it is terrific. And I think you should also not give up on exercise. You should exercise and do more work on that as well. I mean, you know, it's like you can't just take these things and then hopefully you will lose weight and it'll all be gorgeous and wonderful. You have to do other things as well. But it's certainly, when I go out now, I don't usually finish my meal. I leave something, and I think that's good. I think that's a good place to be.
Well, it is. Congratulations on sending your diabetes into retreat. You look brilliant. You must have more energy as well, I would have thought.
Yeah, you absolutely you do. And also, I had a new knee put in, and of course all the weight you can take off that knee is brilliant. I mean, you know, as you get older, that so many things happen to you that, you know, you need to look after one part of your body in order to look after another part, and they accumulate, and you know, as you get, as Betty Davis said, getting older is not for sissies.
That's a good way of putting it.
Very true.
How's the knee bedding in?
The knee is wonderful. I have no pain. I sleep like a baby at night. I find that when I stand up, having sat down for a long time, I find it difficult to stand up. But, you know, it's good. And the other thing, of course, the real problem of getting older is the fear of falling. So I'm very careful how I walk. I look at every pavement ahead of me, looking for potholes and things like that, which, of course, there are so many now in this country. But it's, you know, you just have to look after yourself.
It's quite topical, our discussion about the Mounjaro and these other medications that support weight loss. And the Telegraph have revealed that 2.5 million Britons now use weight loss jabs. That's 1 in 20 adults. But almost all of them, 90%, have to get them privately. Have you had trouble getting hold of your Mounjaro?
No, I haven't. I think because of my type 2 diabetes, I'm very lucky. I can get it easily, and it's prescribed by my doctor, and I'm lucky in that way. I think, you know, as always, there's a financial problem with the government giving out drugs and things, but you know, people have to be. We're all living much longer. Let's face it. I mean, probably 10 years ago, I would have been up for dying, you know, because that was the age that you died, you know. And so, but now we're going on and on. I mean, you know, people are going on to be 100 years old, which I find rather depressing. I don't want to live to 100, but I mean, I think certainly we're all living much longer, and this is a problem for any government that's in dealing with the older person in our country.
Most definitely. What has your weight loss journey done for the share price of Jay Sheiky, your favourite central London restaurant? I mean, have they been laying people off?
Yes, they have. I went to the Arlington the other day to have lunch, and we had a wonderful lunch which lasted, we left the restaurant at 6 o'clock. We went in at 1:30 and came out at 6. I was with Janie D, wonderful actress.
Oh, yes.
And we had a wonderful time. No, I think the trouble is, at the moment, I think the main problem with restaurants is they're so expensive. I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, years ago one could go out and eat so cheaply, and now, of course, restaurants are finding it very, very difficult to survive. And you know, I think we're going to see a lot of closures of restaurants. I mean, we went out with some friends last night to their home and had a wonderful meal, which would have cost a fraction of what a restaurant does. And of course, you can provide your own wine and things. I don't know what the answer is, because I do love going to Sheiky's. I love going to the Arlington. I love going to all sorts of restaurants. But it is a problem because it's getting more and more expensive.
I completely agree, and I think it's a catch-22, a race to the bottom, if you like, because the taxes go up, and therefore the restaurants have to pass that on to the people that go to restaurants, and the staffing costs, and then the inflation, food prices. It really is a hot mess, isn't it? Well, listen, you're not a hot mess, Christopher. You look fantastic. Will you come back and see us again soon on Talk Breakfast?
I'd love to, Mark. I love you. Know how much I love you, and you're so brilliant. It's great. So anytime you ask, I'll be there.
Well, that's high praise. That quote is going on the poster. My thanks to the legendary Christopher Biggins, of course. Broadcaster, actor, comedian, entertainer, and much besides. Next up, this is extraordinary, right? We are going to tell you about an exclusive on the sheer scale of illegal immigration in this country. It will shock you, and we're going to be joined by a Top Sun reporter with the inside story. That's next.
Your party leader, Kemi Badenoch, called Nigel Farage's politics Corbynism with a union flag. Do you disagree with
Nigel's
that?
a Thatcherite. You know, he was a member of the Conservative Party. He's certainly not left-wing, and he's not a socialist. And anyone that says that, I'm afraid that isn't correct. I've known him a long time, and I know absolutely he's not like that. And I think that all these insults backwards and forwards have to stop. At the end of the day, our country should come first. And if it means working together with like-minded parties to rescue Britain from this far-left government, we should put our country first rather than party advantage.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Can I thank you so much for your company this morning? And I'm delighted to say that I'll be back on Weekend Breakfast next weekend from 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. So I do hope you'll join me then. But love all the calls, the text messages and the interaction. It's absolutely key. And shall we see whether we've got a couple of messages actually before our next story. Dan from Kent, great show, Mark. Perfect mixture of guests, topics and public opinion. I wish you and the team a good day. Well, thank you, Dan. I appreciate that. This from Penny in Essex, who's given me a kiss, which I feel very honoured about. Straight back at you, Penny. Mwah! Penny says, good morning, Mark. Margaret Thatcher was the best Prime Minister we ever had. She would have seen this load of cretins off in an instant, and the boats would never have happened. Those days were great, and reform are next. I agree with Biggins, says Margaret in Birmingham. Margaret Thatcher was a great Prime Minister, strong and put this country first. And we have Lillian. Good morning, Mark. I'm listening to your show. The British flag represents British values and is not associated with skin colour. The British people are proud to uphold those values, and therefore flying the flag in response to those who want to destroy British values and culture is understandable. Loving the show. Thank you. Well, Lillian, we're loving your company this morning. More of your messages shortly. But I've got to say, it's a jam-packed Sun on Sunday today. And we've got a double-page spread in the paper with the headline, Shock State of Britain's Failing Criminal System. Deported, but still in Britain and still committing crimes. The Sun reporter Thomas Godfrey has the inside story. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Mark.
This doesn't make for good reading. Or what's exactly going on?
Well, this is a sort of rogues gallery of criminals, many of whom have committed very, very serious offences, serious enough that when they were first sentenced in this country, the government decided they should be deported, or a judge has recommended them for deportation. However, when the time came for them to go home, to be put on a removal flight and taken out of Britain as punishment for their crimes, they simply weren't. They managed to frustrate that process through appeals, or the government simply didn't get round to getting it done. That means they've remained in Britain despite technically being deported, despite supposedly being removed, and they've gone on to commit far more serious offences in many cases, further damaging the people of this country. And now, of course, they are back in prison at taxpayers' expense, costing millions of pounds a year.
And those original deportation orders, that wouldn't have been in relation to shoplifting or littering on the street, would it?
No, these are more serious offences. You are automatically deported as a foreign national offender if you are sentenced to more than 1 year in prison. So to pull out one example, a man called Jason Furtado. His parents came to this country from Angola. He had Portuguese nationality. In 2013, 2014, 2015, committed a series of offences, driving offences, some fairly serious stuff, a bit of drugs in there as well. The government decided he should be deported to Portugal, which is a perfectly safe country. People go there on holiday. And they had actually signed this deportation order in February 2016. That's 9 years ago now. He, however, wasn't sent out of the country. He remained in Britain. He tried to appeal multiple times. While that process was ongoing, of course, he couldn't be flown to Portugal. Just last week, he was sentenced for life in prison for a minimum term of 37 years for murdering someone.
So someone's lost their life.
Someone
at the
has
hands
lost
of
their
an
life.
individual that should not have been in the country. This demonstrates that whether it's Kemi Badenoch or Nigel Farage, who have both talked about deporting upwards of 100,000 people a year, they're going to have their work cut out.
They are absolutely going to have their work cut out, and it's because of the appeal and tribunal system. We explain it in the piece. It is a ferociously complicated task trying to get anyone out of the country if they simply disagree with it. You can get a stage 1 notice, which you can make representations about, then the government make an initial decision. That's the stage 2 notice. But then, even though the government have decided, you can go to a judge. And if you don't like what that first tier judge says, and believe me, some of the reasons we we've seen people convince judges they should stay in the country, they will blow your mind. But if you don't like what that first judge says, Mark,
if I get deported, it's I'm going to have to eat chicken McNuggets.
That's it, or I'll have to cut my hair is another one. But if you don't like what that first judge says, Mark, you can then appeal to a second judge. And of course, we're funding these legal challenges as well. I mean,
through legal aid?
Through legal aid, £1 million a week on immigration lawyers for people appealing their deportation from this country.
Translation services are probably part of it as well.
Yes, absolutely. And actually, the languages for which we use court interpreters now have shot up in the last few years, the costs of that. And actually, the languages most commonly spoken by small boat migrants, Pashto, sort of African languages, Hindi as well, they're the ones going up the most. But just one figure that stands out from this story, that of the 19,390 foreign criminals eligible to be deported from the UK, in the last 4 years, 11,890 foreign criminals have re-offended while in Britain. They've done one offence in the UK, they've served their time, they could have been sent home but they weren't, they've come out of prison and they have immediately committed more serious offences. I'll give you one more example here. A man called Ramazan Mukalazi. In 2008, he raped a young woman. Horrible sex attack. He was given an indeterminate prison sentence, which was still in operation at the time. He was eventually released after serving his minimum term in 2018. When he was released from prison, he was going to be deported, and we got so far along this deportation process, Mark, he went to an immigration removal centre. So there was no legal barrier to his deportation at this point. He was in the removal centre at Heathrow Airport, just waiting to get on a flight. In 2021, he was given immigration bail from that removal centre, and in 2022, he hit a 66-year-old woman over the head, dragged her into a bush and attempted to rape her, and he was only stopped because a member of the public saw him with his trousers round his ankles. He has now been given another life sentence in the UK, and a judge this time has found that he should be deported as soon as he's released from prison.
And of course that's another scandal, which is the cost of jailing and incarcerating foreign criminals. I think there are upwards of 10,000 foreign criminals in our jails at the moment, which comes with an enormous bill. We shouldn't be paying that bill. The countries from which they came should be. And I spoke to a lawyer that represents victims of the grooming gangs, and he said that things like translation services are being leveraged in order to get cases scrapped. Because what will happen is that if you've got your day in court and they don't have a translator that's available, then the judge will throw it out. And the issue is that a lot of these people speak perfect English until they get to court, and then they can't speak a word of English. So it's being completely manipulated.
Yeah, I see it so many times when I'm in court. It gets adjourned and adjourned and adjourned, the can gets kicked down the road, and suddenly you have what you have, the situation with the backlogging courts at the moment, which is trials being set for 2029, by which point I think basically everyone would have lost interest in the case, and suddenly it's incredibly difficult to get justice for people who deserve it. Shabana Mahmood was Justice Secretary in August when she told us in The Sun on Sunday, she told us that she wanted to start doing instant deportations for foreign criminals. You're sentenced to however many years in prison, but instead of actually going to jail and being a burden on British taxpayers, you're simply sent out of the country and banned from returning. None of those have taken place so far. She's now the Home Secretary, so still has responsibility for these things, of course. But I think the cases in here, there are so many examples I could pull out, but the cases in here just show why that sort of policy needs to be introduced as soon as possible.
Well, it's incredibly important journalism, and it's a double-page spread in today's Sun on Sunday. Thomas, lovely to have you in the studio. We'll catch up soon. Sun reporter Thomas Godfrey there. Peter Cardwell is in the house, and Peter, a big 3 hours. So much to get through. Where do you start?
Well,